Chapter 2051. Caw caw caw. A large number of Kagun gushed out from his back, wrapping Odo and Urfu tightly. It was the same from head to toe, making him look like a huge meatball. Clang clang clang. The light bullets all over the sky came and all hit Urfu's body, breaking his defense into pieces. Although Urfu Oldo's defense was strong, his strength definitely belonged to the shocking type. Being able to oppress Takatsuki-sen with his own momentum explained everything. His strength was not an undeserved reputation. However, as the saying goes, the virtue is 1 foot tall, the devil is 10 feet tall. Urfu Oldo chose the wrong opponent this time. Puchi. 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 Being ruthlessly attacked by Yasukani no Magatama, even if Urfu's body was wrapped with Kagun defense, it was also penetrated. The inside of his body was full of holes, and the shocking wounds were terrifying. Grew. However, these disorderly wounds were unable to affect the old duo Fu. In an instant, the collapsed wounds had already condensed into new, bright skin. Urfu was the original test material of Jana Mingbo, and he also inherited the Kaku of Kamishiro Rise. He had strong fighting power, strong resilience, and strong regenerative ability. Damn it, it hurts. Although serious wounds could be healed, it didn't mean that they were immune to pain. Old duo Urfu's body was beaten into a beehive. Especially Light's attack, which was extraordinary and carried a fatal heat. Old duo Urfu's entire body felt like it was being burned, and it grimaced in pain. Is it finally over? After a while, the light bullet stopped. Urfu completely untied the Kagun wrapped around his body, opened his eyes and silently observed the outside world. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The dazzling light suddenly flashed and rushed in a straight line. The speed was so fast that it was difficult to catch. When he recovered, Urfu suddenly felt a pain in his left arm. Puchi. A cold light flashed, and a trace of blood splashed into the void. Turning his head to look, Urfu's pupils suddenly solidified, and he was shocked to find that his left arm was cut off. When did it start? Old duo Fuku was shocked. Although losing an arm was nothing to him anyway, he was a one-eyed ghoul, and he also inherited the scales of Kamishiro Rise, and he could regenerate it. But, what made old duo Fuku shocked was that he was sure that it was Dustless who cut off his arm, and he didn't even have a little time to react. Don't put on such a shocked expression. It's not that I'm too fast, it's just that you're too slow. In the end, it's because you're too weak. Dustless's lazy voice suddenly came from behind. Old duo Fu was still looking back with a confused expression. Little did they know that Dustless was standing in front of them openly. You bastard! Old duo and Urfu almost spat out a mouthful of blood when they heard this. They were so angry that they were stamping with rage. Were the old majority and the second fortune weak? Perhaps for Dustless, he was really weak, but looking at this world, he definitely belonged to the predator standing at the top of the pyramid, the overlord of the overlords. He could crush the SSS-class ghouls. Who could fight against this kind of strength? But unfortunately, he met Dustless, who was more powerful. Saying that he was weak, although this was harsh, it was true. For Dustless, old duo Fu belonged to the fragile type. Buzz, on his back, a thick tail broke out again. This time it was more exaggerated. The scale spread nearly 20 meters long, and the thickness was even more exaggerated than the human body. Immediately afterward, Urfu mobilized the strength of his whole body and lifted the thick Kagun giant whip, standing in the void, and then his eyes were tightly focused on the position where Dustless was, and he slammed it down. Insignificant skill. Seeing the giant Kagun long whip falling down, Dustless's face changed slightly. It was not fear, but the first time he saw that Kagun could be manipulated like this, it looked very fresh. Kensusunu. His eyes blinked gently, and the surging substantialized chakra broke out of his body. In the void, the floating shadow was faintly discernible. Its huge body could not be said to cover the sky, but the moment it appeared, the high fighting spirit in the hearts of Old Duo and Old Fu was instantly extinguished. What the hell is this thing? Looking at the giant monster on Dustless's body, Urfu's cheeks were straight, and the huge Kagun long whip that was smashed to Dustless was also stiff in the air. Looking closely, on Dustless's body, a golden giant suddenly swept out, holding a golden light sword, and the scarlet eyes seemed to be bigger than the human head. Bang! The Kunktachi in Otoku's hand also fell to the ground in a daze. He was not only one-eyed, but also a ghoul investigator. What is there to fight? Looking at the terrifying giant, for the first time, Urfu had such a feeling of despair. It was not that the Old Duo blessings were too weak, but that Wu Qin was too heaven-defying. It was fine if he could use them all, but he still had other abilities. Now that he had summoned such an oppressive monster, even the determination of the Old Duo blessings was shaken. Boom boom boom. The mature body Kansusanu moved, and the ground trembled slightly. He raised the golden sword, and then endless sharpness emerged. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The light sword slashed down, and the blade whistled out, all the materials along the way collapsed, even the ground was cut into pieces, and a hideous crack appeared and stretched to the distance. Puchi. Urfu naturally could not escape the misfortune, and his body was crushed into pieces in an instant. It was not that he did not want to escape, but from the beginning to the end, the whistling wind of the sword was terrifying, and the speed was comparable to lightning, and the body of Urfu was smashed all of a sudden. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 evaluation votes plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2052. Puchi. The huge movement fell, Urfu's body exploded. Even if he had carried out the necessary defense before, Urfu's body was as fragile as paper under Kansusanu's blade. Boom boom boom. The dazzling slash suddenly exploded and turned into a tyrannical wave that spread out. Kakaka. Even if most of the power had been released, the remaining fluctuations were still extremely violent, and the nearby abandoned buildings were destroyed by the terrifying fluctuations in an instant. This should be the end for them. Takatsuki-san said with great relief, looking at the shocking earth. She was relieved and couldn't help but admire her original wise decision. Perhaps standing on the opposite side of Dustless, her end will be exactly the same as Urfu. It's over. Dustless heard the words and glanced at Takatsuki-san faintly, and immediately said coldly, "Not yet, this kid's regeneration ability is good, almost to the point where he can come back from the dead, you take a closer look." Grew. The voice just fell, as Dustless said, Urfu's body began to slowly regenerate, and the broken and shattered body condensed again. "You bastard!" Urfu, who recovered, was angry and stared at Dustless, and his eyeballs almost fell out. Looking closely, this guy was full of bright red blood everywhere, and his whole body was full of bloody smell, as if he had just come out of the blood pool in the hell, filled with an unknown atmosphere. How is it possible? Is his recovery so strong? Is he still a ghoul? Takatsuki-sen was shocked when she saw this. She didn't expect Urfu to be so strong, especially in terms of recovery. It seemed that it was even stronger than the combat power. If this guy's combat power is 10, then Urfu's recovery power is 15. Staring at Urfu, Dustless gently looked around, and said softly, "But it seems that the consumption is also very high." Hoo-hoo-hoo, Old Duo Urfu panted heavily, looking extremely tired. After all, recovery was not without a price. From Old Duo Urfu's sweaty expression, it was obvious that recovery was very strenuous, and the consumption was huge. Looks like I'm no match for him. I have to choose someone else to deal with. Old Duo and Urfu looked at Dustless in fear and found that they were not on the same level at all. Dustless could easily crush him. If he continued to fight blindly, he would undoubtedly die. How about, his cold sight fell on Takatsuki-sen, and a cunning smile flashed on his cheeks. Swish! Swish! In the blink of an eye, his speed was pushed to the limit, and he turned into a gust of wind. I'll use you as my hostage. A cruel and ferocious smile appeared on the face of Otoku Urfu, and the thick kigun on his back broke out again, rushing to Takatsuki-sen like a long whip. Damn it! Seeing this, Takatsuki-sen was secretly angry. She was also an SSS-class ghoul, but at the moment, she was like a burden. Not only did she not help Dustless, but she became the straw of Otoku Urfu's life. Light speed kick. Seeing that the kigun was about to bind Takatsuki-sen, a dazzling flash tore it apart. Boom boom boom. When the light beam was close to the kigun, the two exploded, and the shock wave blew Otoku Urfu back again and again, and he almost fell to the ground. Why is it so strong? Why? I don't accept it. I have put in more effort than anyone else, but in the end, I'm not as good as a guy with an inexplicable origin. It's ridiculous. The miserable old duo Fu roared at the sky, but in the end, they were unable to withstand the aftershock of the lightspeed kick, and were constantly forced back. They even fell to the ground on their butts, landing on their backs in an extremely pathetic state. This time, I'll let you disappear cleanly. Dustless sneered when he saw the situation, his fingertips were gently lifted, and a good energy ball was formed in an instant. Kakaka! The void suddenly collapsed like powder, and a huge vortex appeared. As the energy ball in Dustless's hand rotated, it changed and expanded his own domain. Wang Su's flash. At the moment when the voice fell, the golden energy ball that was brewing in his hand flicked out and turned into a thick light, like a rainbow rushing to Otoku Urfu. Boom boom boom. The void suddenly exploded, and the huge super explosion evaporated the body of Otoku Urfu. Although Otoku Urfu desperately fled at the moment when they were about to fall, the effect was minimal, or even negligible. The attack of the void completely ignored the existence of the distance. Kakaka! The sky within 100-meter radius trembled violently. The void was shattered by the energy fluctuations that spread out in all directions, and cracks appeared everywhere like a mirror. The original blue sky, affected by the Wang Su's flash, turned into a dark night. As for Otoku Urfu, it was even more tragic. His body was directly melted and evaporated by the strong fluctuations. To be able to die under this move, it's your fortune, kid. Dustless stretched, regardless of the shock. Takatsuki-sen turned and left. In fact, this was nothing. For Dustless, it was just a small problem that could be solved with a wave of his hand. Wang Su's flash was an extremely powerful move, and no matter or creature could be excluded from it. It was powerful enough to crush the horizon, and the huge vortex in the void was enough to prove how powerful this move was. It was truly a convenient move for small fries like old Duo and Urfu. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2053. The death of Urfu was just a trivial episode. For Dustless, this kind of small character was not worth mentioning at all, and there was no value to continue to explore. What's more, Urfu's body was not preserved at all, and there was no research value. He died just like that. Takatsuki-sen said to herself woodenly, like a machine without any emotion. Yeah, such a nonentity, wasted so much of my time, he should rest in peace in the underworld. Dustless also sighed, and immediately passed by Takatsuki Sr. Seeing that Dustless misunderstood her meaning, Takatsuki-sen quickly changed her words. When she turned her head to speak, Dustless was already 100 meters away. Who the hell is this guy? Takatsuki-sen's beautiful eyes were full of hesitation. For the first time in her life, she fell into a dead end of thinking. Dustless was like a mountain in front of her, it was difficult to understand. Without exception, everyone who witnessed Dustless's strength was filled with curiosity towards this unknown life form. After all, its strength was too heaven-defying. Whether it was a ghoul or a ghoul investigator, compared with Dustless, they were thousands of miles away. Is this something that humans and ghouls can do? Definitely not. We are going against the heavens. What god? That guy Wu Qin isn't like that. He's a monster that's even more powerful than the heavens. The rats who were secretly observing the changes in the battlefield were all stunned by Dustless's terrifying strength. Originally, they wanted to take advantage of the time when both sides were injured to launch a sneak attack, but they did not expect Dustless to be so heaven-defying. That overwhelming strength almost shattered their eyeballs. Although old duo Urfu was unexpectedly powerful, but from the current situation, it seemed that even 100 of him added together would not be Dustless's match. The manager of the antique coffee shop, Yoshimura Gakusen, took a deep breath. He did not expect Dustless to be so shocking. As one of the members of the V organization, Urfu's strength was beyond doubt. Yoshimura Gakusen even suspected that if he wanted to kill him, he did not need to send other people, just CCG was enough. However, what could he do? He was still beaten by Dustless, and even Urfu's body was not left. It's better to go back. Seeing that the atmosphere was a bit subtly stiff, Kirishima Tuka had to stand up and say, Dustless is too powerful, we are just looking for trouble with him. Although her younger brother, Akane Kirishima, was killed by Wu Qin, Tuka Kirishima retreated when she saw Wu Chen's strength that could destroy the world with a snap of his fingers. She had no hope for revenge. Boom boom boom. Looking up, the void was still violently torn apart. The sky within a radius of a few hundred meters was pitch black. The pitch black hole seemed to be connected to the abyss of the universe. No one dared to walk under the black sky, for fear of being sucked in and torn to pieces. Kirishima Tuka could not help but be stunned. It was not that she forgot her brother's death, but there was a very accurate voice in her heart that warned her that she would die if she followed. If she died, Kirishima Tuka would not care, but if the store manager and others died, Kirishima Tuka's heart was really sorry. Dustless's strength left an indelible mark in her heart. You see, Ba. The store manager Yoshimura Gakusen looked at Ba, who was silent. In the last battle with Takatsuki-sen, if it was not for this guy and other members of the clown organization to help, he was afraid that he would have been destroyed. No matter what, with our strength, we are definitely not Dustless's opponent. Ba said in answer that everyone knew, and immediately bowed his head and pondered for a moment. I suggest to retreat, challenging Dustless is just looking for death. Bullshit. At this time, a very rude voice suddenly sounded. It was a young man with a handsome face. This person was Jukiyama Shi, who Dustless had met when he was still working in the antique coffee shop. At this moment, Jukiyama Shi's face was distorted, which was completely different from his usual elegant and extraordinary speech. Kaneki was killed. We must not let Dustless go, we must revenge for Kaneki, he is a companion. Jukiyama Shi stared at Dustless's back with hatred. If it was not for the store manager Yoshimura Gakusen who held him tightly, this guy would have run to kill him. Companion my ass. Everyone heard the words and rolled their eyes. To put it bluntly, Jukiyama Shi came for Kaneki Ken's body. Unfortunately, he had been killed by Dustless with his body, so Jukiyama Shi naturally hated him. Why don't we cooperate with Arima Kisho? The store manager Yoshimura Gakusen's eyes flashed, and he said with great agreement, now CCG has been completely wiped out, and only Arima Kisho is left alone. I am afraid that he knows that he is not Dustless's opponent, so he temporarily hid. Hearing this, everyone was silent, a ghoul organization looking for CCG to cooperate. Especially a character like Arima Kisho, what a joke. At present, this is the only way. After hesitating for a while, Ba reluctantly nodded and agreed. After thinking about it carefully, it was not hopeless. After all, CCG and the clown organization now had a common enemy, Dushless. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2054. Hey, Alliance. Ghouls and CCG Alliance. I always feel that it's ridiculous. The store manager Yoshimura Kozen shook his head and sighed. When did the alliance between ghouls and CCG begin? Although he used to be the sweeper of the V organization, the store manager still resisted this. Moreover, Arima Kisho, who cooperated with him, once cut off his arms. It was really difficult for them to abandon the past and come together. It seems that this is the only way for now. Soon, the store manager Yoshimura Kozen felt relieved. At present, the ghouls and CCG were almost all killed by Dushless. The resentment of the past could be solved, if not, it could only be reduced to a small matter. There was no way, there was Dushless, such a powerful character, he could only temporarily walk on this road. On the other side, in the warehouse filled with a stench, a white-haired young man sat on the ground with dull eyes. Although there were a lot of water stains around him, and his clothes and pants were wet, and the cold air spread all over his body, the white-haired young man was still unmoved. He didn't even blink his eyes. He looked at the narrow iron window blankly, and powerlessness flashed in the depths of his eyes from time to time. Old duo, that guy was actually killed, this person's dry mouth whispered softly, and his eyes showed the color of memories. It seemed that the relationship with Urfu was quite good, at least they had known each other for a while. This person was Arima Kisho. Originally, he thought that Urfu could defeat Dustless. Who would have thought that the final result was not flattering? The person who was crushed turned out to be Urfu, who was not weaker than him, and even his body was not left. His end was extremely miserable. The previous Special Ghouls investigators were also completely wiped out. Who are you? Get out of here. At this moment, Arima Kisho suddenly screamed, and suddenly turned his head to look. The black shadows floated in the darkness. Looking carefully, he saw that it was Ba and the store manager Yoshimura Kozen. Are you here to seek revenge? Seeing the traces of the two, Arima Kisho's eyes became cold. Of course not. Ba shook his head and bluntly said, if it was a sneak attack, the two of us would have already launched an attack. Why should we continue to stand here and talk nonsense with you? Do you think you can defeat me just by joining hands? Arima Kisho's face remained calm, but there was deep disdain in his words. It seemed that he was saying that it didn't matter even if the two of them came together. This guy, the store manager, Yoshimura Kozen, frowned, and his arm began to hurt. A long time ago, when Arima Kisho was about 20 years old, he repelled the store manager with his shocking strength, tore off his arms, and used the store manager's Kagun to make an SSS-level conch owl. It had to be said that Arima Kisho really had the capital to be arrogant. Why don't we cooperate? After a moment of silence, Ba's tone was very weak and uncertain. Boom 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 boom. But this low tone, in the ears of Arima Kisho, was like a thunderbolt. He looked at the store manager, Yoshimura Kozenhai, with a rare expression of shock. Cooperate. Glancing at the two of them suspiciously, Arima Kisho's first thought was a trap. Why should I cooperate with you? Don't you think it's ridiculous? Of course. Manager Yoshimura Kozenhai sighed and said, you may think that I want to retaliate against you. To be honest, I have such an idea, but then the store manager's tone became a little gentler, and he persuaded, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. If you don't mind, we don't mind cooperating. Let's talk about personal grievances later. The enemy of my enemy. Hearing this, Arima Kisho's face lit up. He nodded seriously and agreed, to some extent, we are indeed on the same path. Everyone's enemy is dustless. If it was before, Arima Kisho would naturally disdain to cooperate with the store manager, but now it was different. He couldn't support himself alone. It was unrealistic to fight against dustless alone. Therefore, he could only have a strong combination. Since there is no way to go, I will gamble with you. Arima Kisho was not an idiot. At present, he was already at the end of the road. As the store manager said, although everyone was enemies with each other, they must go together now. Sooner or later, they will be defeated by dustless one by one. After killing dustless, it is not too late to kill you. Looking at Yoshimura Kozenhai and Yoshimura Kozenhai, Arima Kisho secretly decided that there was no loss to him anyway. At the same time, in the base of Aijairai tree. How is the transformation? Looking at Jana Mingbo, Dustless asked. This guy was still covered with blood. It seemed that he had just come out of the operating room. There was a bloody smell all over his body. This, looking at Dustless with a little fear in his eyes, Jana Mingbo carefully said, it is almost finished. As for whether it can be done, I don't know. The essence of the operation was actually very simple, to turn ghouls into humans. Of course, the humans mentioned here were not real humans, but half-humans like Arima Kisho. Although they also had the blood of ghouls, they did not need to eat human flesh, nor would they be exposed, and their strength would not be weakened. Just like Arima Kisho and Otoya, both of them had the blood of half-humans, but what about their strength? Everyone was stronger than Takatsuki Sen, the one-eyed king who was an SSS class ghoul. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers, 3,000 rewards, 1,000 comments, 500 automatic subscriptions. Chapter 2055. Gulp. Jana Mingbo was so scared by Dustless's words that he broke out in cold sweat. His cheeks looked at the former in a daze. He knew that this was definitely not a joke. After following Dustless for a while, Jana Mingbo gradually understood Dustless's temper. The consequences of angering this guy were absolutely unimaginable. Ao. At this moment, Kamishiro Rise roared twice in an extremely cooperative manner. She looked like she was hungry and couldn't choose food. Her saliva flowed out, causing Jana Mingbo's heart to palpitate. I'll go now, wait a moment. Jana Mingbo was so scared that he almost jumped up and fled like a gust of wind. During this period of time, he used Kamishiro Rise to do all kinds of cruel experiments every day. This woman hated him to death. If she had the chance to eat him, Kamishiro Rise would definitely not be soft-hearted. You look very healthy. After staring at Kamishiro Rise for a while, Dustless slowly walked over. You dare to walk over? Approaching me rashly. You simply don't know how to write the word death. Seeing this, Kamishiro Rise was expressionless, but her heart was filled with killing intent. Although I don't know what that old man did to me, but thanks to him, I have become a lot stronger. Feeling the surging power change in her body, Kamishiro Rise's mouth revealed a cruel smile. Plop plop. Kamishiro Rise's heart beat faster. Looking at the gradually approaching Dustless, the power of her limbs had already reached the limit. Shio shio shio. When she was about 3 or 4 meters away, Kamishiro Rise's feet suddenly stepped on the ground. Caw caw caw. The ground that couldn't withstand the powerful explosive force had a messy crack. Then, Kamishiro Rise, who was standing in the same place, disappeared without a trace. Her speed was fast enough to be comparable to the speed of sound. This guy's explosive power is really strong. Faint ripples splashed in the calm eyes. Dustless looked quite shocked. He was not frightened by the strength of Kamishiro Rise. Even if Kamishiro Rise's current strength was X 100 times, she was not Dustless's opponent. What was surprising was that a few days ago, the strength of Kamishiro Rise was still around the SS class. A few days later, although it had not reached the level of SSS class, the data of various aspects far exceeded the SS class ghouls. It's useless for you to regret it now. This is the result of you daring to experiment on me at will. Be obedient to be my food. Not knowing when it started, Kaneshiro Rise's arms had already tightly hugged Wu Qin. She looked at Wu Chen's face with hostility. It seems that you have really succeeded. Staring at Kamishiro Rise with interest, Dustless said with a smile, to be honest, it's really surprising that you can evolve into a half-human like Arima Kisho. No, you even have more advantages than one-eyed and half-human. It should be said that you can become an existence between the two now, thanks to the old man Janamiko. With him, you can complete this huge transformation, and your strength has also been greatly improved. Haha, hearing this, Kamishiro Rise just smiled gloomily. No matter what, thanks to you, my strength can be improved. In order to express my gratitude, I will accept your meat. Tightly holding Dustless, the two bodies were squeezed together. The strength of Kamishiro Rise's hands was enough to strangle a cow. Caw caw caw. Dustless's body bones began to sound, and even the sound of breaking could be heard. Kamishiro Rise looked up at Dustless's eyes. This guy was surprisingly calm, and his calm eyes were filled with eternal calmness. This guy, Kamishiro Rise, who had already seen the hardness of Dustless's body, was only a little shocked. Then she recovered her calmness, and immediately revealed her white teeth and bit Dustless's neck. Strange, but the moment she touched Dustless's skin, Kamishiro Rise's mouth instinctively stopped. She didn't know why, but she didn't have any desire to eat human flesh. Instead, she felt that eating human flesh was very disgusting. TSK. It seems that she really succeeded. Wu Qin, who was quietly staring at Kamishiro Rise's expression, suddenly revealed a mysterious smile. What do you mean? Kamishiro Rise's face stiffened, and then she questioned Dustless in a very unfriendly tone. Listening to Dustless's words, it seemed that he deliberately let himself be caught. Originally, Kamishiro Rise was happy in her heart, but now she felt uncomfortable, like she had eaten a fly. What do you mean? Looking directly at Kamishiro Rise's gloomy eyes, Dustless sneered, that old man Janamingbo is too slow. I just want to use my body to test you, and the result is the same as I thought. You don't eat human flesh anymore. In other words, you deliberately let me get close to you. Kamishiro Rise's face turned pale. Nonsense, otherwise, do you think you can get close to me with your trash strength? Dustless snorted disdainfully, and then looked at Kamishiro Rise's pretty face, and teased, I heard before that the IQ of a girl in love is always negative. But now I have a different idea. A hungry girl tortured by hunger, her brain is even more pitiful. You're courting death. Hearing this, Kamishiro Rise was furious, and her face turned red. She opened her mouth to the maximum and bit Dustless's cheek. It didn't matter whether she liked human flesh or not, she just wanted to destroy this annoying face at this moment. Unexpectedly, Dustless just blinked his eyes, and a majestic eye power surged out, and Kamishiro Rise's crazy movements instantly stopped. Tsukimi. Plop. The two simple words were like a death sentence, and Kamishiro Rise instantly fell to the ground. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2056. Kamishiro Rise's body twitched slightly, sweating profusely. Her face was as pale as paper, as if she had encountered a legendary demon. Her whole body was twitching strangely, and it was not much different from a mental disorder. What a useless woman. How boring. She was shouting so fiercely before, saying that she wanted to kill me and eat me. Now, she's fallen so easily. Sure enough, people who like to spout nonsense are insignificant ants. Dustless glanced at Kamishiro rise and left. Cough cough. At this moment, Kamishiro rise suddenly coughed and opened her eyes. Although there were 24 hours in the Tsukuyami world, in the real world, it was only 1 second. Oh, how does it taste? Dustless stopped and walked to Kamishiro rise. He squatted down and asked jokingly, after eating so much human meat, "Are you hungry now?" Yes, in the Tsukuyami world, Dustless did not torture Kamishiro rise, but only let her eat enough. Didn't Kamishiro rise like human meat? Wuchen only fulfilled her wish to let this woman eat to her heart's content. The taste is very ecstatic. Dustless teased, "The food in the Tsukuyami world is free, do you want to continue eating? Anyway, I have always been a kind person, do you want to eat again?" "Don't." Hearing this, Kamishiro rise suddenly showed a terrified expression. Obviously, she was afraid of being tortured. If she was a ghoul in the past, she would definitely like to eat human meat, but now it was a world of difference. She was transformed by Jana my hero into a half-human like Arima Kisho. In terms of diet, she was close to human. Now, continuing to eat human meat was simply a kind of painful torture for her. Even if she was a ghoul, eating human meat for 24 hours in a row would definitely make her nauseous. Dustless, Sama, come and save me. Just as Dustless was about to continue teasing Kamishiro rise, a panicked cry for help suddenly rang out. Dustless looked back and saw that it was the old man, Janamingbo. However, his current state was not good. Instead, he was being captured by a group of mysterious people. Yo, Dustless's eyes narrowed as he looked at the group of people. He smiled and said, "Is this the best battle? Everyone, are you all planning to throw your lives away? Your deep feelings are truly touching." The people who came this time were Arima Kisho, the store manager Yoshimura Kozen, and some people from the clown organization. In addition, there were also Jukiyama Shi and others. Not only that, but there were also several hostages, Takatsuki Sen and Janamingbo. In addition, there were several other members of Aijai Rai Tree. They really took great pains to deal with Dustless. "Are you trying to blackmail me?" Dustless's eyes were slightly cold as he asked faintly, "However, using your daughter as a hostage, I have a new view of you, Manager Fangtsuan." "Sorry, I'm incompetent." Takatsuki-san showed a bitter smile. She was seriously injured before, and she had not recovered yet. Then she was besieged by Arima Kisho and others. It was inevitable that she would be captured alive. Arima Kisho alone had pressure on her, not to mention that there were other people supporting her. It was normal for her to be captured. Some things are inevitable. Looking into Wu Chen's eyes, the store manager, Yoshimura Gakusen, said in a deep voice, "To fulfill some people's wishes, some people are destined to be sacrificed. I can't sacrifice my friends and my employees for family. Is it? Sacrificing your daughter to fulfill others. You think you are great." Dustless glanced at the store manager with disgust. He did not look at the old guy Yoshimura Kozen. As the store manager Yoshimura Kozen said, sometimes sacrifices were inevitable, but it was still incomprehensible to give a reason to sacrifice his daughter. Dustless also guessed his intention. He probably expected Takatsuki-sen to threaten him. "Hey, they are all here. Is this lineup a total mobilization to die?" However, Wuchen just glanced at Takatsuki-sen gently, and then smiled ferociously. "That's good, it saves me the trouble of looking for you stinky rats, even if this garbage city sinks, it doesn't matter." Because CCG was also a ghoul, after the exposure, almost all the people in Tokyo ran away. Now there were only a few ghouls left. After all, ghouls needed to eat human flesh. If human beings disappeared, ghouls naturally could not survive. They were closely related to each other. Without human beings, ghouls could not continue to live. You bastard! Is there something wrong with your head? If this city disappears, what's the benefit of it to you? When they heard Dustless's crazy words, everyone showed a stunned expression. Regardless of whether what Dustless said was nonsense or not, although Tokyo had now become an empty city, there were still many ghouls. Dustless's crazy words seemed to want to drag the whole movement to die together, which really scared everyone. Whether Dustless could do it or not, everyone unanimously labeled Dustless as a crazy person. This guy was dangerous, even his thoughts were very dangerous. Kill him, this guy is a scourge. Arima Kisho held a black briefcase in both hands, and the glasses he wore condensed a lot of ice. Apparently, he also wanted to kill. Tokyo was still very balanced before, but it was broken by Dustless, who was a monster. The initiator of everything was him. Shrimp soldiers and crab generals said one day that they want to kill a healthy human being. Are you still sleeping? Dustless just shook his head when he heard the words. It was not that he looked down on this group of people, but Jiu Hantian was really overconfident. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2057. Go to hell. Jukiyama Shi's face was ferocious, and he was the first to lose his temper. At the same time, a dark blue cocoon broke out from his back, like a python wrapped around his arm, and the front end became a sharp sword. Jukiyama Shi was undoubtedly one of the people who hated Dustless the most. Dustless had not only trampled on his dignity, but also humiliated him unceremoniously, and even the food he wanted to taste the most, Kaneki Ken, was destroyed by this guy, and even the body was not left. Don't act rashly. Seeing that Jukiyama Shi was going to fight Dustless, Arima Kisho reached out and grabbed him. Let go of me. Jukiyama Shi's anger finally broke out, and he roared, this bastard killed my delicious food, and even the body was not left for me, do I have a reason to let him go? Kaneki Ken had always been the most desirable food for Jukiyama Shi, and he was killed by Dustless, how could he bear it? Absolutely not. Stop. The boss of the antique coffee shop, Yoshimura Gakusen, looked at Jukiyama Shi fiercely, and released the majestic murderous aura that he had accumulated for many years. Jukiyama Shi, who was struggling violently, barely stopped. I know you have a reason to not let Dustless go, but I can't watch you die. Looking at Jukiyama Shi, who was almost angry, Yoshimura Gakusen comforted him, you can't beat Dustless alone. Jukiyama Shi was just an S-class ghoul, and Dustless. It was far beyond the SSS class. Idiot. Arima Kisho just looked at Jukiyama Shi coldly, and he couldn't help but hesitate. Cooperating with a group of shrimp soldiers and crab generals, can they really defeat the invincible Dustless? Forget it, I'm counting on that. Thinking about the plan that he had planned before, Arima Kisho looked at Dustless's eyes, and he once again recovered his calmness, and there was a little more confidence. Does this kid have a trump card? Wuchen looked at Arima Kisho with surprise. As for the others, they were almost ignored. Among these people, Arima Kisho was the strongest half-human. The others, to put it bluntly, were just clowns waving flags. Ding ding! Immediately, after Dustless's curious gaze, Arima Kisho took out his mobile phone and made a series of calls, and reported his location. My coordinates. Wuchen raised his eyebrows slightly. Although he was a little far away from Arima Kisho, he didn't know that Wuchen's hearing was surprisingly clear even though his hearing wasn't as good as his eye power. What Arima Kisho said was the location of the abandoned warehouse. Retreat. Arima Kisho suddenly ran away without saying anything. His behavior was extremely strange, and he ran faster than anyone else. After running for about 10 meters, Yoshimura Gyozen and the others came back to their senses. Remembering the previous plan, they also hurriedly ran away. In such a large space, only Dustless and the half-dead Kamishiro Rise were left. Do these guys need to be so afraid of death? Aren't you here to annihilate Dustless? Kamishiro Rise muttered to herself. She originally wanted to take advantage of the chaos to escape. Destroy me. Dustless glanced at Kamishiro Rise, and sneered, Are you blind? Those trash run faster than rabbits. You. Kamishiro Rise originally wanted to mock Dustless, but when she saw his terrifying face, she tactfully shut her mouth. After being taught a lesson by Dustless several times, she had completely lost her temper. Hurry up and get out of here. Glancing coldly at Kamishiro Rise, Dustless's tone was particularly harsh. As for helping Kamishiro Rise, don't joke, Dustless was sure that she would bite him. Boom! At this moment, the entire building suddenly shook violently. A large amount of dust fell off as the building swayed. Even the depths of the ground trembled slightly. Dustless frowned, and his observation haki spread out, taking in the situation within a few kilometers, and suddenly understood what happened. No wonder Arima Kisho called and reported my coordinates. It turned out to be this. Through the perception of his observation haki, Dustless found that in the blue void, countless flames fell from the sky, and the number was a large black area, and the location of the attack was the abandoned warehouse where Dustless was located. Boom! The violent explosion spread out, and even tens of meters below the ground were destroyed. This trick doesn't look like a ghoul. As a ghoul, Kamishiro Rise naturally understood the fighting methods of ghouls. They all belonged to the type of close combat, and they couldn't make this kind of earthquake, like the terrible movement of the end of the world. It's a missile. His eyes narrowed, and Dustless gave a shocking answer. This kind of hot weapon, when the number reaches a certain level, the power is also terrifying. Kamishiro Rise heard Dustless's explanation and did not refute it, but she agreed, Let's get out of here, the power of the missile can easily destroy us. It's just destroying you. Dustless said without hesitation. Things like missiles had no effect on him at all. The elemental transformation of glinting fruit was enough to ignore all physical attacks, and any attack was just useless. Of course, the large-scale attack of saturation was indeed enough to destroy Kamishiro Rise. Although ghouls were stronger than humans, they were not invincible. For example, in the original work, after ghouls were swept by bullets, they would still die. If it was replaced by some kind of unprecedented hot weapon, such as nuclear weapons, it was more than enough to destroy Kamishiro Rise. To Dustless's surprise, Arima Kisho was really a smiling tiger. He was afraid that Dustless would destroy the city, but now he used hot weapons to attack Dustless's location, which was shameless. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 evaluation votes plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2058. Boom boom boom. The violent explosion shook the entire building, causing it to collapse. Damn bastards. Kaneshiro Rise gritted her teeth. She hated Arima Kisho and the others to the bone. Just like Dustless said, if she was attacked by a large number of firearms, she would definitely die. If she wanted to live, she could only. Thinking of this, Kaneshiro Rise subconsciously looked at Dustless, who acted as if nothing happened. If I want to live, I can only count on this guy. Kaneshiro Rise thought so and subconsciously approached Dustless. This woman is really opportunistic. Glancing at Kaneshiro Rise behind him, Dustless could even feel Kaneshiro Rise's breathing. It was rapid and nervous. Obviously, this woman didn't want to die yet. Of course, if they could live, who would want to die? It's good that you know your place. Dustless showed a rare imperceptible smile, and immediately a large number of materialized energy waves erupted from his body. Roar, roar, roar. A roar that seemed to have come from ancient times suddenly resounded through the clouds like thunder. The moment it resounded, the entire world trembled. Boom, boom, boom. The golden energy monster's body continued to grow, and in an instant, the warehouse exploded. Roar, roar. The tall and sturdy giant revealed his ferocious body, and a faint howl reverberated between heaven and earth. What kind of monster is this? Inside Kansusanu, Kaneshiro Rise was stunned. To be fair, it was the first time she saw such an unprecedented monster. Inside the golden energy monster, Kaneshiro Rise felt particularly peaceful. Boom, boom, boom. A large number of firearms bombarded Kansusanu, but there was no reaction at all. The huge body of Kansusanu just trembled slightly, and a large amount of black smoke splashed out. Weak. Glancing at the black smoke on Kansusanu, Dustless just smiled casually. Clang, clang, clang. Immediately afterward, Kansusanu's katana of light came out of its scabbard, and it was filled with an invincible sharpness. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Looking at the various missiles in the sky, Dustless swept out his katana. Boom, boom, boom. The front part of the katana of light swept out a destructive sharpness, and with a destructive momentum, it shattered a large number of missiles in the east sky. Poochie. The power was so great that it was unprecedented. Even the indolent white cloud in the void was unlucky and was annihilated by the exaggerated power of Susanoo. Golo. Everyone stared at the sky with their mouths agape. All of them were stunned. Boom, 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 boom. A raging wind blew, and black smoke filled the sky, engulfing the vast world. The pungent smell of gunpowder entered everyone's lungs through their noses and mouths. It's too strong, we're no match for it. Not to mention the others, even the most stubborn Arima Kisho, who demanded to kill Wuchin, felt powerless and fragile in his heart after staring at the supergiant who stood tall and stepped on the ground, despising everything in the world. It's useless to regret. We have chosen God as our enemy. We must be ready to fight. The store manager, Yoshimura Gyozen, warned at the top of his voice. Looking at the majestic figure, his heart fell into the abyss, and it was too late for regrets. Kansusanu's body almost covered the sky. Thinking about fighting such a monster, the store manager felt a chill in his heart. It was not that they were afraid of death. If they could take Dustless down with them, they would not hesitate. But in the face of Kansusanu, this kind of move really belonged to the ultimate monster of the super dimension, and they had no means to deal with it. I'll go first. Seeing that everyone was hesitating, Jukiyama she snorted disdainfully and stood up resolutely. Young man, you have courage. Dustless had a murderous smile at the corner of his mouth, and he gave a rare look of appreciation. Being willing to die so generously, it also showed that this kid gave everything for Kaneki Ken. This rare gay love was truly admirable. But then again, at this moment, the world was solemn. An indescribable pressure spread out, giving people the illusion that they had suddenly changed space and arrived at the legendary moon. The gravity had doubled, and it was difficult to move an inch. There was also a suffocating pressure, and breathing was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Retreat. Everyone vomited blood and found that the reason why they felt such great pressure was entirely because Kansusanu's Tachi of Light was raised again. Damn it, that kind of move can be used infinitely. The hearts of Arima Kisho and others collapsed, and the panic and fear were difficult to hide. This guy was too terrifying. He could even use this kind of unprecedented move at will. Was there any chance of winning? Everyone thought that Dustless would go a little too far, but they did not expect that this guy's momentum was not reduced. It seemed that Kansusanu's control did not consume any extra strength at all. Although the target was Jukiyama Shi, everyone's heart was pressed by a mountain, as if what would be destroyed next was not a simple Jukiyama-shi, but the whole world, and they would inevitably perish. All creatures felt the sense of insignificance and death that they had never felt before. Even so, it can't stop me from avenging Kaneki. His resolute and decisive tone was not ambiguous at all, and it carried a trace of undisguised willingness to face death calmly. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2059. In order to eat human flesh, you are not afraid of death. You are a weirdo among weirdos. In Kansusanu, Dustless stared at the crazy Jukiyama-shi and couldn't help but shake his head. This idiot obviously took the initiative to die. He let him go once, but he didn't expect this kid to be so insensible. He was so fearless of death. He wanted to eat Kaneki-ken so much that he didn't even want to live. And a long time ago, Kaneki-ken was evaporated by Dustless. In that case, I will send you to hell. You can eat him again in hell. Glancing coldly at Jukiyama-shi, Kansusanu's several meters long sword fell from the sky. The ground changed dramatically in an instant. The terrain was rewritten in an instant. Boom boom boom. The momentum of the sword overflowed from Kansusanu's sword of light. The moment it fell, the whole earth was smashed by the overwhelming force. Puchi. The sword cut through Jukiyama-shi's body. As if it touched paper, it instantly tore him into pieces and crushed him into a bloody mist. Caw caw caw. Not to mention the corpse, Jukiyama-shi's body was easily cut open at the moment the sword touched him, and even the internal bones were crushed into a bloody mist. Puchi. 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 After crushing Jukiyama-shi, Kansusanu's sword continued to move forward, unscrupulously moving forward for several kilometers, turning the complete earth into a bottomless dark abyss. The fresh soil deep in the ground was exposed to the explosion. Arima Kisho and others saw this. They had goosebumps all over the ground. They looked at the golden energy giant in the sky with fear, and their faces twitched in panic. Everyone unanimously showed the intention of retreating and flinching. It was not that they were incompetent, but the enemy was too strong. Susanu stepped forward several times, and suddenly, the earth trembled and the mountains shook. Even people who were hundreds of meters away could feel the slight vibration, and when Susanu stepped forward, a large amount of sand and dust splashed out. Stop right there. Seeing that Kansusanu was getting closer and closer, and that giant foot was about to crush manager Yoshimura and the others, Arima Kisho anxiously stopped it. If they dare to come any closer, I'll kill them. Pointing at several cadres of Aojirai tree, Arima Kisho threatened with a cold face, Dustless, you don't want to see your subordinates killed by me, do you? If that's the case, then immediately. Boom boom boom. Who would have thought that before Arima Kisho could finish his words, Kansusanu's huge body moved again. It seemed that it would crush Arima Kisho and the others in just a few steps. Do you think I don't dare? Are you underestimating me? Arima Kisho was furious and immediately released Kuin-ku without hesitation. A strange weapon appeared in his hand, and the front end was pointed at several captured Aojirai tree cadres. Paw paw paw. Golden lightning suddenly flashed in front of Kuin-ku, and then the golden energy ball quickly rushed out. Boom boom boom. The bound Aojirai tree cadres were trampled by Arima Kisho, and their bodies were suddenly blasted into several halves, and their corpses dissipated like scattered flowers. Boom boom boom. However, Arima Kisho's actions were useless, and Kansusanu's huge body was still moving forward. You want to threaten me? Dustless Kansusanu's mouth swept a scornful and contemptuous smile, and his dull voice was like rolling thunder, and in the blink of an eye, it spread to every corner of the world. Even if all the humans in this world die, don't even think about threatening me. The deafening sound spread throughout the world, and then, Kansusanu's giant foot lifted up, and aimed at the location of Arima Kisho and the others, and came over unceremoniously. Gulp. Everyone was stunned when they saw this, and their hearts were filled with despair. Run! Arima Kisho, who realized the danger, quickly warned loudly, and escaped the capture of the giant foot at the fastest speed in his life to avoid being trampled to death like a bug. Boom boom boom. Kansusanu's big foot fell, and suddenly the ground shook, and there were more cracks on the ground. Oh, there are a few bugs that react quickly. Dustless lowered his head and looked down at the several figures in the dust below, and touched his chin. The strength of a few rats is average, but their speed of escape is first class. At the moment when it was trampled by Kansusanu, several black shadows jumped out of it. Sure enough, it's them, they are really lucky. Dustless squinted his eyes and looked carefully, and the vague figures in the dust were suddenly clear. He found that the figures who escaped with wings were Arima Kisho, Yoshimura Kozen, Takatsuki Sen, and others. It's not time to die, but it's over. Blindly running away is just a reflection of weakness. Looking around, the strength of these three people was extremely powerful. Needless to say, Yoshimura Kozen was an SSS-class ghoul, the famous one-eyed owl. In addition, the strength of Arima Kisho was beyond doubt. More than 10 years ago, he severely injured the SSS-class ghoul at that time, Yoshimura Kozen. His strength was naturally good, although he was an SS-class ghoul, his real strength was far beyond this limit. As for Takatsuki Sen, she was just a simple captive, a burden that dragged them down. It's so dangerous. Arima Kisho, who escaped from the disaster, gasped with relief, looking at the flattened ground. He shrugged his shoulders and subconsciously stepped back a few steps. As for others, they were simply trampled to death, and there were no bones left. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2060. It's almost done. Looking at the broken Tokyo, Dustless removed Kansusanu with no expression. Kansusanu took a few steps casually, and the ground shook. Especially the Kansusanu released by Dustless was even more powerful. The surface within tens of kilometers was affected by the aftermath. It's over. After looking around, Dustless removed the mighty Kansusanu, and his cold eyes were like a cold wind, sweeping over the few people who were struggling to survive. Surrender quickly, or I will kill him. Perceiving that Dustless landed, Ha grabbed Takatsuki Sen's neck in an instant, and the Kagun on his back turned into a sharp sword, pointing at Takatsuki Sen's throat, which was enough to easily cut her throat and destroy her life in an instant. Ha ha ha. Naive, threatening me only proves that you have exhausted your abilities. Seeing this, Dustless just grinned, and immediately ignored Ha's warning, and walked slowly. Your warning demonstration is meaningless. If you want to die more comfortably, you can kill yourselves collectively. As Wuchen walked over slowly, he reminded leisurely, the person I value is in front of me. If you can really kill her, it means that you're strong enough to ascend to the heavens. You think I don't dare? Ba was infuriated by Dustless's words until smoke was coming out of his 7 orifices. He said in a cold voice, quickly surrender. Don't challenge my bottom line. This kind of person is also a scourge in this world. Best to kill him. The store manager, Yoshimura Kozen, was unexpectedly silent. He didn't even look at Takatsuki Sen, but just stared at Dustless, and his face was gloomy from time to time. The clerk of the antique coffee shop died tragically. What was left in Yoshimura Kozen's heart was simply revenge. It's not that you don't dare. Dustless shook his head, staring at the Kagun's sword that had been close to Takatsuki Sen, and explained softly, your speed is too slow. In the short moment when you are about to kill her, you will die before Takatsuki Sr., Dustless said lazily and casually, looking straight at Ha. his tone contained great confidence and calmness. "You forced me to do this." Hearing the words, Ha was furious, and the dense cocoon on his back all shot to Takatsuki-sen's neck. Anyway, according to the previous plan, Takatsuki-sen will definitely die. Arima Kisho also agreed with this approach. After all, it was a powerful ghoul of the SSS class, and it was extremely dangerous. Shoo! Takatsuki-sen closed her eyes. In a trance, she had already seen the miserable death of her body separated from her head. Boom! It was also at this moment that a deafening commotion broke through the horizon. The entire world seemed to be in a golden river, sparkling with starlight. It's dazzling, even if her eyes were closed. Takatsuki-sen could feel the warmth of the sharp edge. It was warm, like being in the center of the sun, but it was not as hot as the sun. All in all, it was very warm, and people could not help but want to put down the guard in their hearts. Under curiosity, Takatsuki-sen subconsciously opened her eyes. Who is it? She didn't know if she didn't see it. After opening her eyes, what came into her eyes was the light. The speed was extremely fast, and it flashed away. It seemed that the distance of thousands of miles was just a moment. Go to hell. Ha's face was ferocious, and the scarlet cocoon jumped with unknown killing intent. Puchi. The light cut through the fatal cocoon, and the flash cut it off at the moment when Takatsuki-sen was killed. Buzz! Then, the light gathered and condensed, and in the blink of an eye, it turned into a vague figure. The messy black short hair was dancing with the wind, the back was very thin, and the figure was not very tall, but witnessing the attack of the dark red thick cocoon, it was fearless, and it gave people a very stable and trustworthy feeling. This guy. Why is his speed so fast? Ha was shocked. Not only him, Arima Kisho and Yoshimura Gakusen also opened their mouths, and their eyes were filled with unconcealable astonishment. Why is he so fast? Because I am the Flash who ate the flash fruit. Dustless shrugged, and his face was indifferent. The indifferent face with this lazy tone was full of contempt and ridicule. So arrogant. I don't know if you will still be so arrogant after your head is minced. Ha sneered. The cocoon on his back was like 100 flowers blooming. A large number of thick cocoon were like blood-red pythons, biting Dustless ruthlessly. Dustless did not avoid it. Takatsuki-sen was behind him, facing the sharp edge. There was no way to avoid it. Of course, there was no need to avoid it. Puchi. The sharp edge, shining with cold light, jumping with the halo of death, easily pierced Dustless's head. Suddenly the light shone, and a large number of photons erupted from his head. Seeing that Dustless's head did not spray out brain juice, Ha could not help but be stunned. This guy's blood is golden. Arima Kisho asked in surprise. His eyes were fixed, and he was also stunned. He subconsciously thought that Dustless's blood was golden. This must be a new type of ghoul that had never been seen before. Idiot. Dustless, whose old head was inserted with cocoon, suddenly opened his mouth. Endless sneers spread to the sky. I am immortal, immune to all physical attacks. At the beginning, this is an unequal war. Phew. At the same time, Dustless looked cold, his arms shook slightly, and the Kusanagi sword was compressed in the blink of an eye, and then, the golden sword swept out. Puchi. Compared with Dustless, Ha's speed was too slow as a turtle. Even if he realized Dustless's attack, the speed of his body was still too slow, and he was hit hard. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2061. Gulu Gulu. Blood flowed quickly from Batsu's chest. The speed was fast, like a rapid stream. It seemed that all the blood in Batsu's body would flow out. Batsu clenched his teeth. His distorted face looked like he was in pain. However, this guy deserved to be a ghoul whose strength surpassed the SS class. He just closed his mouth and didn't speak. He looked quite tough. His sharp eyes stared at Dustless. He couldn't wait to peel off his skin and pull out his bones. Really fragile. Reaction. Really slow. Dustless's contemptuous tone, like a thorn, deeply hurt Batsu's self-esteem. His painful face suddenly became ferocious. Everyone had self-esteem. Ouch! Hysterical screams came out from his mouth full of blood. Batsu's eyes were scarlet, jumping with unknown murderous intent. His eyes bulged, which was particularly terrifying. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At the same time, a large number of Kagun on his back once again swept over. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Not only Batsu launched an attack, but even Arima Kisho also launched an attack. He released Kunk, and the weird weapon shot a large number of golden lightning energy balls. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Not only these two people, even the store manager Yoshimura Gikusen also shook the Kagun behind his back. Suddenly countless needle-like bone darts were shot out. It was similar to the feathers of birds, but the strange thing was that it was harder and sharper than the steel sword. Hee. Seeing this, Takatsuki-san laughed, but her haggard face was slightly miserable and lonely, and her laughter was also miserable. If one day, his biological father pointed his sword at him, no matter who it was, he would definitely be hit hard. Dustless naturally would not wait for death. A dangerous halo jumped in his eyes, and violent energy fluctuations burst out. With Dustless and Takatsuki-san as the center, a perfect defense circle was formed, isolating all attacks. Shinra Tensei. Dustless roared, and a transparent air cover suddenly appeared around his body. Bang bang bang. The incoming attacks collapsed one after another. Attacked by the repulsive force, all of them were shattered. Moreover, because Bailey was too close to Dustless, he suffered a fatal blow in an instant. Pucci. He was already severely injured to begin with. Now that he was struck by the repulsive force, he spurted out a mouthful of blood. Then, he was sent flying, lying on the ground half dead. Swish. Swish. The dangerous sound of breaking through the air galloped over. Dustless turned his head and saw that it was a dense ball of thunder and lightning. Arima Kisho. Dustless smiled knowingly as he stared at the bespectacled white-haired man. Immediately, his eyes looked directly at the golden energy ball that was attacking him. With a flick of his finger, an even more terrifying light beam whizzed out. Tao Breaker 88, Flying Dragon Strikes the Thief. Boom boom boom. A sharp roar resounded through the sky. The blue sky was covered by the thick beam of energy. It majestically pounced towards the energy ball that had a great momentum but was actually as small as a raindrop. It turned out to be the blue sky. Because Dustless's move was too exaggerated, the sky also turned into the same beautiful color as the 88th Tao Breaker. Everyone held their breath. Seeing that the two were about to collide violently, everyone widened their eyes. It should be able to offset it, right? Looking at the thick laser beam that covered the sky, Arima Kisho lowered his head and guessed. His hands that were holding Kuin-ku's hands were already sweaty. However, ideals were often beautiful, but reality was extremely cruel. There was no so-called offset. What was even more shocking was that the situation turned out to be one-sided. Pucci. Arima Kisho shot a large number of golden lightning balls through Kuin-ku. Like a piece of ragged clothes that hadn't been worn for many years, the 88th Tao Breaker easily shattered and scattered with the wind like goose feathers. Boom! Under the attack of the 88th Tao Breaker, the void trembled, and the scattered lightning balls finally disappeared. They burst open like fragile water droplets, turned into starlight all over the sky, and quietly left the field. So fragile. Arima Kisho was stunned. He suddenly felt that his brain wasn't enough. What was the beginning? He was so fragile, and his move was easily defeated. That's how fragile you are. Otherwise, do you think you're so strong? Dustless smiled and didn't say anything. He stared at the stunned Arimakisho. This guy thinks too highly of himself. Does he really think he's invincible? Of course, in terms of the power system of this world, Arimakisho was indeed a predator standing at the top of the food chain. But this time, it was a pity that he chose the wrong enemy. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The energy beam that covered the sky continued to move forward unscrupulously, distorting the sky and tearing the vast earth apart. Boom boom boom. It wasn't until several mountains a few hundred meters away were smashed into pieces that they finally stopped. So strong. Everyone stared at the distant sky, dumbfounded. Even though they were a few hundred meters away, the terrifying explosion caused by the energy beam blasting the mountains could be clearly felt. Under such an unprecedented attack, the word escape had completely lost its meaning. At this moment, Arimakisho and Yoshimura Gyozen could feel the violent vibration even though they were a few hundred meters away. The shock wave of the explosion even pushed their bodies back constantly. I'm not his opponent. Realizing the difference in strength, Arimakisho smiled bitterly. If this continues, it's better to surrender as soon as possible. Anyway, it's just asking for humiliation. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2062. It's not that Arimakisho and others are idiots, but the enemy is too powerful. Invulnerable strength, enough to be immune to all physical attacks. In the face of such an enemy, anyone will have a headache. The odds of winning are pitiful. After a little estimation of the odds of winning between the enemy and himself, Arimakisho helplessly found that once they fight, the odds of winning on their side seems to be zero. That is to say, no matter how they fight, even if Dustless stands and lets them attack, the final victory or defeat belongs to Dustless. After all, the ability of elementalization is too powerful. Even if Dustless stands still, it is enough to exhaust Arimakisho and Yoshimura Kozen. Scared? Just now, the appearance of the two of you having victory in your grasp, I'll never forget it for the rest of my life, Dustless mocked eccentrically. Ta. Dustless stepped forward lazily, approaching an inch closer. Arimakisho and Yoshimura Kozen would retreat a few meters away, so that they have a sense of security. When facing Dustless, the two of them did not have the slightest bit of courage. They only retreated instinctively, almost developing a panic attack. It's not a good idea to keep retreating. The pace suddenly stopped. Yoshimura Kozen's face was full of anger, and his red eyes were also dotted with endless coldness. Shio. His back trembled slightly, and a large number of hard objects similar to needles whistled out, shooting out like raindrops. Let's start with you. The eagle's eyes stared at the store owner, Yoshimura Kozen. Dustless stared intently, his deep black eyes were as terrible as the abyss, flowing with cold hostility. As for the sharp objects that were shot head-on, Dustless didn't even look at them, as if they didn't exist, and continued to move forward. Poochie. Without the slightest escape, Dustless's body was penetrated one by one. His head, abdomen, 2 pairs of legs, 2 arms, and 2 eyes were penetrated by the sharp objects. If it was an ordinary person, naturally, he would be dead. But Dustless, God is really unfair. Why is there such a monster alive? What kind of stupid things did we ghouls do to make people angry? Seeing Dustless showing this ability again, the wounds recovered in an instant. Yoshimura Kozen couldn't help but complain. This monster-like existence really violated the law of biological evolution. To some extent, he has broken away from the category of human beings and become a creature in another field. Arima Kisho's tone was full of resentment, and it gave people the feeling that he was complaining. There is no way, any creature has its fragile side. After several setbacks, even a strong person's character will change. Xiao. Wu Chen's body was like air. Even if they could hit him, they couldn't hurt him. He continued to walk over slowly with a calm expression. I can't beat him. Arima Kisho and Yoshimura Gikusen both felt powerless. The two looked at each other and wanted to retreat. As long as there is life, there is no need to worry about firewood. Such a shallow truth is known by the world, not to mention Arima Kisho and Yoshimura Gongsun. If he knew that he was going to die for sure, yet he still courted death without fear of death, wasn't this an idiotic behavior? Retreat! With a sudden shout, Arima Kisho's body turned into a burst of light and disappeared. Kozen Yoshimura was stunned for a moment. After noticing that Arima Kisho had disappeared, his mouth twitched and he quickly slipped away. Bastard, don't run. Seeing such a scene, Ba was so depressed that he almost vomited blood. His body had been shattered by dustless. He wanted to run, but he was powerless. Dao Breaker 90, Black Coffin. A cold voice suddenly descended. The half-dead Ba felt his entire body turn cold, as if he had been targeted by some kind of natural disaster. He subconsciously raised his head to look at the horizon. Bastard, I will not forgive you even if I become a ghost. Seeing countless black cold lights falling from the depths of the void, after yelling, Ba's body was instantly fragmented. Puchi! 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 The invisible black blade had no substance, but it was real. It was impossible to guard against it. It easily penetrated Ba's body and dismembered him like minced meat. How powerful is the recovery ability of ghouls? It's like this, you can't recover. Glancing at the dead Ba lightly, Dustless looked straight into the distance. Even if Arima Kisho and Yoshimura Gongsun had escaped, under the perception of observation hockey, Dustless still clearly felt their movements. Phew! Photons filled the sky, and a violent sound of breaking through the air fell. Following that, Dustless also disappeared without a trace. In front of the light, hundreds of thousands of miles were just a short distance. I finally escaped from that devil boy. Hiding under the dark ruins, Yoshimura Gongsun breathed heavily, turned his head and glanced behind him. After noticing that there was no movement, he was relieved. Hurry up. Without much rest, Yoshimura Gongsun chose to continue running. There was no other reason, Dustless was too dangerous. However, at this time, a sudden change occurred. Phew! Yoshimura Kozen raised his head and saw a ray of deadly golden light sweeping toward him. It was extremely tricky and aimed at his neck. Kakaka! His right foot suddenly stepped on the ground, the surface suddenly collapsed, and Yoshimura Gongsun decisively retreated. Too slow. The indifferent tone was like a machine, without emotion, the deadly dangerous light, the speed was faster and more ferocious. Puchi! In the end, Yoshimura Gongsun was still hit by the big move. The arc of hot cold light tore his chest, and blood flowed. Light speed kick. Looking at the opportunity, Dustless jumped up with his right foot and hit Yoshimura Gongsun's face with all his strength. The powerful force directly shattered the one-eyed mask on his face. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus chapters, 3,000 rewards plus chapters, 1,000 evaluation votes plus chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus chapters. Chapter 2063. Caw caw caw. Receiving a fatal and ruthless blow, the one-eyed mask on Yoshimura's face suddenly collapsed, revealing his true face. His haggard cheeks were particularly hesitant and full of confusion about the future. Although Yoshimura always warned himself to be strong, he was also frightened by Dustless's strength. The gap between the two sides was too big. Boom boom boom. The light exploded, and the hot storm covered his whole body. Yoshimura's whole body was swallowed and occupied by the fire, and the high temperature burned everything. It's so hot. In the huge fire, Yoshimura's painful scream could be heard, and only people with good eyesight could see it. Because the power of the light speed kick was too fierce, the cocoon on Yoshimura's back was quickly burned out. He was originally in the state of Kakuja, and his whole body was surrounded by cocoon, but the temperature of the light speed kick was too high, and Yoshimura in the flame could not withstand the high temperature and was quickly melted. Phew phew phew. At the same time, there was a sharp sound from his back again. You dare to come back. Turning his head, Dustless found that the person who came into his sight was Arima Kisho, who was holding conch in his hand. Boom boom boom. The energy ball, which was the size of a human head, crackled and rattled. Its power was extraordinary, and it was accompanied by a scorching light. Its meaning was similar to the light speed kick. Not only was its power astonishing, but it was also accompanied by an extremely high temperature. Didn't I say before that I am a flash person who ate the glint fruit? All physical attacks don't work on me. Wu-chin shook his head slightly and looked straight at the incoming energy ball. He stood still and didn't even try to hide. He just stood there quietly. Boom boom boom. In the end, several dangerous golden energy balls all blasted on Dustless's body, annihilating him in the flame. Boom boom boom. A violent explosion swept from Dustless's body, and his body was suddenly blown apart, scattered, but there was no bleeding. Good opportunity. His eyes narrowed slightly, and Arima Kisho rushed quickly. Phew phew phew. Arima Kisho's body was like a stream of light, rushing over at a high speed, crossing layers of space and maximizing the speed of his life. However, the strange thing was that Arima Kisho thought that he would take the opportunity to attack Dustless. After all, it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It would be unreasonable if he didn't attack. But the strange thing was that Arima Kisho didn't hesitate at all when he walked past him. And the target was Yoshimura Kozai, who was tormented by the flames. Leave now. Holding Yoshimura Gyozen's body, Arima Kisho retreated at full speed. His original intention was to save Yoshimura Gyozen. After all, this old guy's combat power was extraordinary. If he died, it would be a pity. Arima Kisho would not be able to support himself. I understand. Yoshimura Gikusen glanced at Arima Kisho and immediately left with his help. You two are leaving just like that. At this moment, a chilling sound suddenly came from behind. It was like a cold wind. Arima Kisho and Yoshimura Gikusen both shuddered. At least leave something behind. Dustless narrowed his eyes and focused on Yoshimura Gikusen's body, for example, the things inside the body. Run! Hearing this, Arima Kisho and Yoshimura Gikusen both sped up to leave. The wind under their feet was like a gust of wind, disappearing into the sky. Stupid! You exposed your back to the enemy. If I don't kill you, even God will not forgive me. Dustless shook his head and sighed, calmly raising his right arm. Kakaka! The golden energy ball condensed in an instant, and the straightened thumb swallowed the photons in the vacuum. Laser! The straight laser finally shot out. It was obviously hundreds of meters away from Arima Kisho and Yoshimura Gikusen, but the light was still so fast that it approached the two in an instant. Puchi! The terrifying edge penetrated Yoshimura Gikusen's body, leaving a fist-sized mark in his heart, and his body was instantly penetrated. Since he was an enemy, Dustless naturally would not be merciful. This old man was very stubborn. He was delusional to think that ghouls and humans could coexist. It was incredible. If ghouls wanted to live, they must eat human flesh, and humans naturally did not want to be eaten, even the corpse was no exception. Therefore, the two sides were destined to be unable to reconcile. Putong. His heart was destroyed. Yoshimura Gikusen naturally entered the end of his life. The strength of his body was lost in an instant. He even did not pay attention and fell to the ground. Is this the end? Yoshimura Gikusen, who was lying on the ground, looked at the sky in confusion. In his eyes, there was regret. If he could stand on Dustless's side at the beginning, he would not fall into such a miserable situation. Everything was entirely his own fault, and he could not blame others. This is bad. Glancing at the wound on the store manager's chest, Arima Kisho suddenly knew that the old man was finished. It was impossible to save him, and he would definitely die. His heart was destroyed, and even his internal organs were erased. It was impossible to save him. You go. His turbid eyes glanced at Arima Kisho, and Yoshimura Gikusen said in a deep voice, I have already come here, I can stay here to delay time for you. Whoosh! Who would have thought that when these words just fell, a dazzling light fell from the sky? Puchi! The golden light cover on Yoshimura Gikusen's body seemed to carry thousands of gravity, and his body was crushed in an instant. It's funny, an old man wants to delay me. In the light beam that fell before, there was a disdainful tone, and then Dustless, who looked as usual, came out and stared at Arima Kisho intently. At this point, you're the only one left. Go to the underworld and accompany them. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2064. It seems that I have to end it here today. Staring at Dustless's calm cheeks, Arima Kisho smiled sadly. I have been a ghoul investigator for so many years, but I didn't expect to end up so ridiculous, being chased like a stray dog. There's something wrong with what you're saying. Hearing this, Dustless just shook his head and said calmly, It's not that I want to chase you, but you blocked my way. Really? Arima Kisho murmured and immediately raised the strange Kuin-ku again. Phew! The golden light swept at the front, followed by the high-density thunderball roaring out. Boom! The powerful energy ball blasted onto Dustless's body, blasting his body into smithereens. The photons that spurted out piled up all over the sky. Is it like this again? Arima Kisho smiled bitterly, his hand loosened, Kunkin's right arm almost fell, and his mood was frustrated and sad. Buzz! There was an inexplicable energy ripple in the void, and the photons that burst open immediately gathered again, gradually turning into a human's mentality. Arima Kisho, you should kill yourself. Glancing at Arima Kisho faintly, Dustless's body used elementalization to recover quickly. The gap between us is really different. You don't want me to do it. That's right. Hearing this, Arima Kisho didn't comment, looked at Dustless, and finally nodded. As Dustless said, in any case, Arima Kisho can't defeat Dustless, and he can't even hit the real body. Is it necessary to continue? Even if Dustless doesn't move his body, Arima Kisho will die sooner or later. If you commit suicide, you can still keep your body intact. Pointing to the body of Yoshimura Gyozen, Dustless, kindly persuaded, see, you don't know what's good for you. Looking at the place where Dustless's finger pointed, Yoshimura Gyozen's body had collapsed and turned into a large pool of blood and debris about the size of sand. There was no bones left. Farewell. Immediately, under Dustless's indifferent gaze, Arima Kisho picked up Kuin-ku in his hand again, but this time he didn't take the initiative to attack Dustless, but aimed at his own neck. At least you know your place. Upon seeing this scene, Dustless finally heaved a sigh of relief. His eyes involuntarily drooped as he thought in his heart, "We have wasted enough time. It is almost time." However, at this moment, Dustless's contemplation came to an abrupt end. He suddenly discovered that a tall shadow had covered him, revealing an endless gloomy and cold aura in front of him. Out of curiosity, Dustless looked up and his pupils suddenly froze. Die. Arimakisho was as silent as a ghost. He approached Dustless quietly, and the big sword that he held tightly whistled down. Looking at the falling Kuin-ku dumbfounded, Dustless noticed the extraordinariness and was really surprised. He wasn't surprised by Arimakisho's strength. No matter what kind of Kuin-ku was, it was garbage and slag to Dustless. What was surprising was that Dustless smelled something unusual from this Kuin-ku. It seems to be the same Kagun as the Yoshimura store manager, and the smell is somewhat similar. Slightly sniffing, a unique bloody smell suddenly entered his nostrils, and it was somewhat similar to the smell of the Yoshimura store manager before. Could it be? Thinking back, Dustless suddenly thought of something, but it was too late. Puchi! The blood-red katana fell from the sky, cutting half of Dustless's body and directly cutting him in half. At the moment of death, Dustless's eyes were wide open, full of disbelief, as if he was unwilling to die. "You are too careless." The indifferent tone with a bit of ridicule suddenly sounded. Arimakisho's mouth squirmed, and he said to himself, 10 years ago, I participated in the War of Encirclement and Suppression of Owl, tore off his arms, and made him into an SSS-class Kuin-ku Owl. Speaking of this, Arimakisho's calm tone had a hint of pride. At the age of 19, Arimakisho was already a second-class search. He fought with the SSS-class Owl, Yoshimura Gakusen. He cut off the arms of Owl and successfully defeated Owl. This battle became one of his heroic deeds and let him rise 2 levels in a row. You can die under its edge, you can close your eyes in the netherworld. Glancing at the blood-red katana in his hand, Arimakisho sighed in a low voice, and then turned away without looking at Dustless. Phew! At the moment of turning around, a cold wind suddenly came from behind. Looking up at the sky, the vast sky was covered with a layer of dark clouds. Strange, Arimakisho murmured and muttered in his heart, it was fine just now. Why did the wind suddenly blow? Out of curiosity, Arimakisho looked back. His eyes instantly solidified, and he was full of rare panic and helplessness. So fast! Even if Arimakisho had realized the danger and retreated at the first time, it was still too late. The golden katana had crushed his body. Puchi! Just like the scene just now, Arimakisho's body was split into 2 halves and separated from his eyes. How is this possible? The short 5 words were the last sentence of Arimakisho in the world. He was full of doubts until he died. Who killed him? Hi. A lazy voice suddenly sounded, following the source. It was Dustless who was safe and sound. I really don't understand why you idiots are so proud. Shaking his head, he glanced at Arimakisho's body with pity. The Dustless that this guy killed was just transformed by Jinjutsu. Farewell, it's time to leave this world. Gently glancing at Arimakisho's body, Dustless's body disappeared under the blue sky. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2065. Arimakisho and Yoshimura Gakusen were dead. Dustless naturally had no need to continue to stay. It also meant that the trip to this world was about to end, and it was time to leave. Are they all dead? So fast. Takatsuki-sen, who came, looked at Arimakisho, and her eyes widened. Her dull eyes looked quite dull. Arima Kisho's strength was beyond doubt, and he was extremely powerful, but now only Dustless continued to stand, indicating that Arima Kisho was dead. Arima Kisho. Glancing at Takatsuki-sen, Dustless pointed to the two halves of the body on the ground and apologized. "I'm sorry, I used too much strength and split the guy into two halves." Dustless shrugged and made a very innocent expression, but Takatsuki-sen rolled her eyes. She absolutely did not believe what Dustless said. It was absolutely nonsense. Dustless hated Arima Kisho and his people. He wished that they would all die. If there was a plan, he would definitely kill them. Although it was an accident, it was normal to split Arima Kisho alive. It was very suitable for Dustless's style of doing things. Hearing this, Takatsuki-sen's mouth twitched twice. Looking at Arima Kisho, who was unwilling to die and still had his eyes open, she could only mourn for him slowly in her heart. "Where is my father? No, where is the old man?" Mentioning her father, Takatsuki-sen's tone was obviously low. Her mouth was cold, and her pupils were flowing with raging cold light. "This guy," Dustless glanced at Takatsuki-sen and asked jokingly, "Why, are you going to give your father a final stab? Zizi, you are his daughter. Do you need to be so cruel? Final stab." Gently chewing this strange word, Takatsuki-sen immediately shook her head and said, "I don't know what final stab means, but I don't mind giving the old man a few stab." "You are really cruel." Dustless rolled his eyes and immediately waved his hand and said, "No need, Fangmura Gongshan's body has turned into sand-like particles." "Humph, that old bastard is lucky." Takatsuki-sen stamped her feet angrily and looked quite angry. For the store manager, Takatsuki-sen hated him very much. The old man abandoned her when she was a child. He didn't save her before, and even used Takatsuki-sen to threaten Dustless. The so-called father-daughter relationship had long since faded to the point where it could be ignored. "Quan, let's retreat. The mission ends here. Everything that should be cleaned up has been cleaned up." Glancing at Takatsuki-sen faintly, Dustless leisurely turned and left. Time flew by. In the blink of an eye, 10 days had passed. Pucci. The golden brilliance cut through the thorns, smashed the ghoul in front of him in one fell swoop, and cut its waist. Intestines and various other organs were exposed to the sun. Quan, they should have been wiped out by now. Above the ruins, 3 figures looked into the distance. Under them, there were endless corpses, piled up into a mountain, and blood flowed into a river, filled with the smell of blood. Dustless, Sama, Takatsuki-sen looked at Dustless respectfully, and immediately said seriously, "The ghouls in Tokyo have almost been wiped out, and there are only a few of us left." In the past few days, Dustless almost wiped out all the ghouls. Anyway, it was a scourge to keep them, so he killed them all. It was like saving the world. And thanks to Dustless, Takatsuki-sen was also changed into a half-human, and she no longer needed to eat human flesh and live a normal life. "Is it?" Lowering his head and sighing, Dustless murmured to himself, "Then, let's retreat. This is the last moment in this world. If there's anything you haven't solved yet, go and finish it quickly. Leave in 2 hours." The things that should be dealt with had been dealt with. Dustless had no reason to continue to stay and delay time. "Leave." Kaneshiro Rise glanced at Dustless suspiciously. She still had a shadow in her heart for this guy, and there was an almost instinctive fear in her eyes. "Yes." Dustless nodded and said in a deep voice, "This world has come to this, so. The things that should be solved have been solved, naturally. There is no need to continue to stay." "I refuse." Kaneshiro Rise immediately shook her head when she heard the words. Going to the unknown world with Dustless, what if she was kidnapped? Although this concern was somewhat ridiculous, it was not unreasonable. "Refuse?" Staring at Kaneshiro Rise with interest, Dustless narrowed his eyes and joked, you can refuse, but I will use the previous, Tsukuyami, on you. Are you threatening me? Without waiting for Dustless to finish talking nonsense, Kaneshiro Rise couldn't wait to interrupt Dustless, staring at him angrily, clenching her fists. She couldn't wait to beat Dustless. Haven't you been beaten up enough? Dustless looked at Kaneshiro Rise lazily, and suddenly raised his leg. Buzz buzz buzz. Then, Dustless's leg was covered with a dazzling light, ready to go. Want to try? Dustless had a smirk on his face, and at the same time, he shook his leg. The high-density light was concentrated and filled with fatal sharpness, making Kaneshiro Rise's scalp tingle. Can't this bastard be more considerate of others? Kaneshiro Rise complained in her heart. She was furious, but she could only endure it. The difference in strength between them was as exaggerated as the sky and the earth. The latter was destined to look up to the former. Even if it was the gates of hell, Kaneshiro Rise had to go with Dustless. If she wanted to complain, she could only complain that he was too weak. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2066. Kaneshiro Rise could only endure and sulk. There was no way. The scene of being trampled by Dustless before was still vivid in her mind. If she refused the conditions of Dustless, she was afraid that she would be tortured half to death. About an hour later, Takatsuki-sen, who went far away, finally came late, but surprisingly, she also brought a blue-haired girl. Kirishima Tuka. Dustless looked at the girl in front of him with a little surprise. He saw that the girl's crimson eyes were full of coldness, and there was a bad luster. Feeling the eyes that could not wait to cut him into pieces, Dustless smiled and said indifferently, "The people in the antique coffee shop have been wiped out. Even if you hate me, it is useless. Dead is dead." If she wanted revenge, she could only kill Dustless, but this was simply impossible. Even if Kirishima Tuka was divided into 10 people, she was not Dustless's opponent. Kill me if you have the guts. Kirishima Tuka's small face was angry, and she was not afraid of Dustless's oppression. Kill you? Dustless shook his head when he heard the words, and immediately his face showed a wicked smile. Killing you directly is too easy for you. It is better to put you by my side. Put me by your side. Kirishima Tuka was stunned for a moment, and immediately asked coldly, "You put a deadly enemy by your side, are you not afraid that he will kill you?" Kirishima Tuka was puzzled, her eyes were filled with endless astonishment. She always felt that Dustless's head was broken. Just by you. Hearing this, Dustless couldn't help but smile. Not to mention himself, many female confidants in the system, almost every one of them was the existence that crushed Kirishima Tuka. If you can kill them, you are really powerful. Dustless shook his head. He was too lazy to continue to pay attention to Kirishima Tuka. This girl was just an additive to his boring life. In recent days, the news that all the ghouls were wiped out naturally spread out. Tokyo, which was originally dead and empty, once again had many humans return. About a few months later, knowing that the ghouls in Tokyo had completely disappeared, this deserted city gathered a large number of humans again. But this was all in the future. In the system world. Let's cross to the next world. Under the shade of the green tree, Dustless stared at the beautiful girl and asked, "Every time I cross, I look forward to it." An unknown world meant a strange territory. Every time he transmigrated, Dustless was looking forward to it. Do you start now? The system consciousness Ling Er glanced at Wu Qin. After seeing him nod his head, she waved her finger gently. Caw. The blue sky suddenly distorted, and the invisible sky shattered with a bang, revealing an unprecedented dark tunnel. Who? Ling was, Dustless was, her was very calm, it seemed, it was very calm, as if it was, I'm going in. After thinking for a while, Dustless decisively went into the space tunnel. The world in front of him was immediately wrapped in darkness. The sky was blue, there were no clouds, on the street, people were bustling, and their faces were full of satisfied smiles. Really, Coterie, next time I will never take you out shopping. The handsome boy sighed and looked at the girl with a ponytail behind him. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The girl happily hugged a lot of snacks, her eyes narrowed into a crescent moon. She looked very satisfied, her perfect little face was very satisfied, and her mouth was humming a pleasant song. These two people were Itsuka Shido and his sister Itsuka Kotori. So old, still liked to eat snacks, just like a child. Itsuka Shido sighed, his words were full of helplessness. Buzz, at this time, the void suddenly twisted, and a huge black hole appeared, exuding a terrifying gravity. What is that? Black hole. Is God not happy with us humans and punishing us? No, this thing seems to be Spacequake. It must be Spacequake. Run. After the crowd regained their senses, they were stunned for a moment before they immediately scattered in all directions, revealing fearful expressions. Soon, the deafening sound of an alarm rang through the sky. After detailed inspection, a large-scale spacequake will occur in this area in 10 seconds, please evacuate immediately. After detailed inspection, a large-scale spacequake will occur in this area in 10 seconds. The mechanical alarm kept repeating the same sentence, and the citizens quickly hid in the shelters, their faces full of fear and terror. There was even endless disgust. To humans, fairies were the embodiment of disaster. 30 years ago, the Eurasian air disaster had taken the lives of hundreds of millions of people. People were terrified of such an unprecedented disaster. Boom, boom, boom. The black hole in the void suddenly exploded. The violent shockwave flattened the glass in a 1-kilometer radius, and even the nearby buildings shook. Kaboom! Some of the buildings couldn't withstand the violent shockwave and collapsed like willow branches. Fresh air, a splendid world. What a nice place. A voice filled with emotion came from the distant horizon. He looked up and saw a shadowy figure standing in the sky. His black hair fluttered in the wind, and his two dark eyes were as bright as the stars. I think I heard someone call me a fairy. Without a doubt, the intruder was Dustless. He floated in the sky and pondered. Is this the world of Date Battle? P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 tips plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2067. But this group of people is really stupid. I remember that elves are all female, right? I'm a man, and this group of idiots actually thought that I was an elf. They even said that I caused some kind of spatial tremor. What a joke. Even ignorance has a bottom line. Shaking his head and sighing, Dustless's body slowly descended. Looking down at the huge city, his heart could not help but be filled with emotions. To be honest, after crossing through several worlds, although his heart had been polished, coming to a foreign world still touched his heart. He could not help but feel emotional every time. I have just arrived and I am already listed as an enemy. What an unexpected calamity. No wonder they mistook me for an elf. The humans in this world probably think that only elves can cause spacequake. Thinking back to when he just arrived in this world, he caused a violent spacequake. This kind of thing had happened before, but unfortunately, this world was regarded as the so-called spacequake. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. At this moment, a sharp sound pierced through the sky. A mysterious flying object with flames on its tail flew towards him. That is, Dustless frowned slightly and looked over carefully. When he recognized the object that was attacking him, his face turned cold. His handsome face flashed with a strong murderous intent. I have just arrived in this world and someone is already trying to destroy me. That is too disrespectful. The so-called elf who is hostile to me is probably that, AST. The Special Forces of the Land Self-Defense Force. They were commonly known as the AST, Anti-Spirit Team. They were a unit established with the main purpose of annihilating elves by force. Compared to Ratatoskr, whose purpose was dialogue. Since normal physical weapons were not enough to fight against elves, the members were equipped with CR Unit, Tactical Display Device Mounting Combination, Combat Realize Unit. This allowed ordinary people to have the ability to fight on the front line. It could be said that they were the existence of modern magicians and artificial magicians. However, CR Unit was only used on a small number of people. Boom boom boom. Dustless's body was besieged by fierce firepower. He suddenly exploded, splashing a large amount of smoke and flames. A violent wave erupted from the depths of the void. Is it destroyed? A girl with delicate features flew into the sky. Her small face was serious as she muttered to herself. With a head of white hair, her appearance was exceptionally perfect. Her white skin made people want to peck it gently. The white-haired girl was called Kite Origami. She was also the one who attacked Dustless first. When Origami was young, her parents died because of the appearance of a flaming elf. So she hated elves. In order to prevent others from suffering the same tragedy as him, he strived to eliminate the elves as his goal. In short, this white-haired girl hated fairies very much. Every time she met a fairy, it would awaken her bad memories of the past. Origami, without my order, you are not allowed to attack. Daybreak Prairie Fire, who was wearing CR Unit equipment, scolded. She was the direct superior of Kitsunichi Origami. Staring at the white-haired girl, Kite Origami's face showed a helpless expression. Every time Origami saw elves, she would be extremely extreme. She had tried to persuade her before, but it seemed to have no effect. Oh! What a group of rude girls. At this moment, Dustless's lazy voice came from the boiling sea of fire. You don't greet me when you see me, and you open fire when you have a disagreement. No, you don't even have a disagreement. Until now, you haven't said a word to me. In the sea of fire, an extremely strong wind suddenly burst out, blowing away the entrenched flames. Then Wu Chen, who was safe and sound, slowly walked out with a calm face. Unscathed? The members of AST looked at Dustless in shock. Although they knew that elves were extremely powerful and could do what humans could not, it was rare for Dustless to be unscathed after being hit by a large number of missiles without any defense. What is there to be shocked about? Showing an expression of disbelief in front of your enemies will make them look down on you. You took the initiative to attack me. If I don't give you the necessary punishment, it will make me look like a pushover. Looking at the stunned girls, Dustless only snorted in disdain. If this kind of trash can kill me, I would have been destroyed hundreds of years ago. Humph. Kite Origami heard Dustless's arrogant tone and immediately swooped down. She also threw away the equipment in her hand and changed her weapon for a sharp blade that looked like it was compressed from a laser. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. A straight line of light flashed across the sky. Kite Origami was equipped with CR Unit and arrived on time. Her fatal blade had already cut Dustless's throat. Slash! The blade fell mercilessly. Dustless's head was suddenly cut off and fell to the ground from the sky. He should be dead now. Seeing the head on the ground, Kite Origami breathed a sigh of relief. When she turned to look at Dustless's body, the world in her eyes was replaced by a large number of flashes. You must be thinking that I'm too weak, right? A ghostly voice resounded. Kite Origami's eyes widened. She found that Dustless, who should have been dead, appeared in front of her, and it was extremely exaggerated that he was a headless corpse. Buzz buzz buzz. The head that fell before suddenly elementalized and turned into a pile of bright light particles. Then, it quickly floated up and condensed at the place where Dustless was not. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2068. What kind of monster is this guy? The members of AST were stunned, and they stared at Dustless with their mouths agape. Such a strange elfin, with strange and bizarre abilities, and an existence that defied the natural order of things. A male elfin. Under the sun, Liaozi stared at Dustless with his mouth agape. When he got closer to Dustless, he realized that he was a man. At first, he thought that this guy was a woman, especially with the vicissitudes of life in his tone. There was no specific distinction between men and women. Moreover, Dustless's skin was white, and his appearance was handsome and refined. If he were to wear women's clothing, everyone might think that Dustless was a woman. I'm not an elfin. Of course, it's useless to quibble. It's up to you whether to believe it or not. Dustless shook his head. He did not expect Kite One Origami and the others to believe him. In their understanding, people who had superpowers and could cause space to vibrate were all elfins. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. A sharp whistling sound came from the left, and it was so loud that it hurt their eyes. Dustless also felt that he was locked on by a dangerous aura. He turned his head to look, and a burst of silver light hit his face. It's you again. Seeing Kite One Origami's cold face, Dustless inevitably frowned. Even if you don't know what's good for you, you should have a bottom line. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. The glowing blade swept over again. Kite One Origami, who did not believe it, once again slashed the light blade in her hand towards Dustless's head. Clang clang clang. A clear roar followed. Dustless did not indulge Kite One Origami anymore. He decisively took a counterattack, and his right hand whistled out at lightning speed. At the critical moment, he blocked the light blade that was coming at him. His method was extremely shocking. One finger. Kite One Origami looked at Dustless in shock, or simply looked at his right arm. When he looked up, he saw Dustless easily blocking Tokichi Origami's attack with a single finger. The white thumb suppressed the lightsaber, preventing it from moving forward. It was easily intercepted in front of Dustless's chest. No matter how much strength Origami used, it could not break through Dustless's thumb. How is that possible? Is this guy's finger made of steel? Steel. Even if his fingers are made of steel, we can still cut them off. You're right, CR unit equipment can easily cut through steel, but against this guy, every member of AST felt their heads spin. They were stunned by Dustless's heaven-defying performance. A single finger had blocked Toichi Origami's beam saber attack. What kind of concept was this? That was not a wooden saber. Even ordinary steel could be easily cut through. At this moment, what made everyone's jaws drop was that Dustless had actually used an unassuming finger to block the laser sword that could cut through iron like mud. How could everyone not be shocked? Even if he was cheating, there must be a certain level. With your level, there is only one way to defeat me. Dustless's tone was very serious. It did not seem like he was joking. What way? Staring at Dustless's clear eyes, it did not seem like he was lying. Origami asked subconsciously. People like Dustless had no reason to lie to her. Hearing this, Dustless's expression changed. He suddenly laughed and teased, "In your dreams. Arrogant guy, you're courting death." Origami's small face was red with anger. This cruel answer was quite a blow to her. She immediately held the lightsaber with both hands and slashed at Dustless. This little girl's body is petite, but her strength is quite great. Dustless looked at Origami with surprise. Then, he calmly flicked a ray of light from his finger and directly attacked the lightsaber. Laser shot. The dazzling light whistled out and hit the lightsaber head-on. Gotcha! As if it had met its natural enemy, the seemingly extraordinary lightsaber was instantly pierced, leaving a hole about the size of a fist. It can even emit light. A group of AST members were stunned. They were shocked and speechless as they looked at Dustless. What kind of monster is this guy? His skin is harder than diamonds, and he can fly on his own. Other than that, he can also emit light. Is there such an elf? Liaozi's eyes were gloomy. He was even more pessimistic about Origami. Everyone, let's go together. Not daring to underestimate Dustless, Liaozi ordered his subordinates to surround Dustless. The crowd formed a circle. Everyone stared at Dustless. With your level, killing me is as difficult as ascending to heaven. Looking around, Dustless bluntly said, you should go back to class. Especially you. Dustless's line of sight swayed and once again fell on Origami. He smiled seriously and said, seeing that you have a good physique and extraordinary appearance, why don't you be my personal maid? Don't look down on me. Liaozi glared angrily and almost couldn't resist slashing at him. Origami's cute little face was also filled with rare anger. Her parents were killed by the elves. The grudge between them was irreconcilable. How could she recognize a thief as her father? You can't bear to part with her. Dustless glanced at Liaozi under the sun and immediately pointed at Kite Origami. He asked in surprise. It's okay. I have always been a kind person. If you want to continue to accompany me, you can follow Origami and join me. Then I would rather die. Liaozi raised her eyebrows and said coldly. She was young, but her temper was big. If that's the case, Wu Chen's figure flashed and disappeared. Not to mention the blurry trace of a shadow or residual shadow, when everyone came back to their senses, Wu Chen had already disappeared. I have shown you the way. If you don't know what's good for you, you can only accept being trampled on. If the enemy was a tough person, it was actually very easy to reason with them. There was no need to use the great principles of the literati. You could just use your fists to crush them. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers, 3,000 rewards, 1,000 comments, 500 automatic subscriptions. Chapter 2069. Bang, bang, bang. A row of dense bullets swept over, and the continuous flames pierced through Dustless's body. Poochie. 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 The body that stood in the void was pierced through one after another, and there were thousands of holes all over his body. Almost no part of his skin was intact, and his entire body was torn apart. He should be dead now, right? Under the sun, Liaozi stared at Dustless with burning eyes. Seeing the bullet marks all over his body, she heaved a sigh of relief. Although the elves were strong, they would definitely die if they were beaten like this. However, sadly, not long after Liaozi finished speaking, she was quickly slapped in the face. Buzz, 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 Dustless's body emitted a bright light that spread all over his body. The holes all over his body were instantly repaired. In the blink of an eye, he was restored to his original state under everyone's stunned gaze. This, under the sun, Yuichi Origami, and her other subordinates all widened their eyes in disbelief. Their dumbfounded expressions were rather comical. It was not that they were ignorant, but Dustless was too shocking and had refreshed everyone's understanding. It's my turn. His gaze froze, and his dangerous eyes stared at the few of them, sweeping over them as if he was choosing his target. Be careful, Origami. This guy is very dangerous. Under the sun, Liaozi approached Yuichi Origami and stared at Dustless with a wary expression. She shook the gun in her hand, seemingly warning Dustless not to act rashly. Tisk. Seeing this, Dustless only snorted contemptuously and sped away after sneering. Bang, bang, bang. Seeing Dustless's excessive actions, a row of dense bullets greeted him again. Poochie. 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 Dustless's body was once again riddled with holes and bruises. His body was full of bullet holes, and it was a tragic sight. If an ordinary person or an elf turned into another elf, they would be shot into a sieve. Other than death, there was no other way out. However, Dustless was an exception. Poochie. The bullets continued to rain down on Wu Chen's body. Wu Chen's body was smashed into pieces, but even so, his expression did not change. His face remained indifferent from the beginning to the end. Not only that, but Dustless also stepped on the air calmly, completely ignoring the rain of bullets. Damn it. Retreat for now. Seeing Dustless charging towards him, Daybreak Prairie Fire cursed loudly. He pulled Kite One Origami with his right arm and hurriedly retreated. It had to be said that to be selected as a member of a special unit like AST, Blazing Sun, as the team leader, was indeed an outstanding existence in all aspects. His reaction was very timely. Swish. Swish. Under the sun, Liaozi pulled Origami Kite and fled frantically. Their speed was so fast that one could only see a straight flash of light. That annoying male elf is too strong. We need to come up with a new plan. Under the sun, Liaozi said as he panted. He turned his head and looked at Yuichi Origami subconsciously. His eyes were instantly stunned. Where are they? After being stunned for a while, Liaozi realized that Yuichi Origami Kite and his other subordinates were nowhere to be seen. The veins on his forehead suddenly popped out. On the other side, the ground was filled with smoke and burned black. A few girls in a sorry state and a tall and straight body could be clearly seen. A group of people stood out. There was no doubt that it was Dustless and the others. They were all captured by Dustless. That girl is your team leader, right? Her strength is average, but her ability to escape is commendable. Dustless gave a thumbs up, but his tone was full of sarcasm. Kill us if you have the guts. Yuichi Origami Kite did not show any weakness. Even if she was captured, her attitude of hatred towards elves did not change at all. Instead, when she faced Dustless, her anger seemed to be greater. How can this be? Dustless stubbornly shook his head and said in a very serious tone, from today onwards, you are a member of my territory. Your territory? Where is it? These words were like a panacea. Not only was Yuichi Origami Kite stunned, the other AST members who were captured also looked at Dustless in confusion. They could not figure out what he was talking about. This guy still has a territory. Could it be his lair? Yuichi Origami Kite and the other AST members exchanged glances with each other. There was a flash of light in their eyes, as if they were all planning something. Yuichi Origami Kite and the others planned to get Dustless to speak first, then sneak into his lair to overthrow him. There might be other elves too, so they could take the opportunity to eliminate them all. Okay, we promise you. Yuichi Origami Kite's eyes turned and chose to compromise for the time being. Very good. You are very tactful. Hearing this, Dustless smiled slightly and immediately announced loudly, from now on, this planet under my feet is my territory. I welcome you to be a part of it. Pfft. Yuichi Origami Kite and the other AST members almost vomited blood. Did they still need Dustless to welcome them? The few of them were originally members of this Azure planet. This guy is simply outrageous. His thoughts are as ridiculous as a child's. Does he think that just by opening his mouth and casually saying that Earth is his territory? It's simply wishful thinking. How can he say such stupid words? Ignorant. Yuichi Origami Kite's teammates exchanged glances and glared at Dustless indignantly. This guy must have a screw loose in his head. Dustless wanting to swallow up such a big planet was tantamount to a fool's dream. Although the elves were powerful, humans were not made of mud. Otherwise, they would have been destroyed long ago. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2070. The members of AST were infuriated by Dustless's arrogance. They glared at Dustless and stomped their feet in anger. They were not happy with Dustless's arrogant attitude. At the same time, in another direction, two pairs of sneaky eyes were quietly sizing up Dustless and the members of AST. Kotori, let's get out of here. This is not the place for us. Shido tugged on Itsuka Kotori's sleeve and looked at the ruins. He couldn't help but shudder and took a few steps back with fear on his face. You're not very useful, the immature Itsuka Kotori sighed softly, and her fair face was filled with extraordinary calmness and wisdom. Kotori knew Shido's special ability. Although she could seal spirits, there was nothing she could do. Asking Dustless to go on a date with Shido. Kotori got goosebumps when she thought about it. If she did that, Dustless would go crazy and destroy the world. The only way is to make him like this world. Kotori and AST had different ideologies. AST was an organization that was hostile to the spirits and would destroy them. Ratatosker, on the other hand, was a member of Kotori's Ratatosker. I have no choice but to do it myself. Itsuka Kotori's eyes were filled with courage. It seemed like she had made a decision. She released an unimaginably powerful aura. Even Itsuka Shido was shocked. Why did his sister, who had always been weak, suddenly change so much at this moment? Even her aura had become much stronger. What are you looking at? Itsuka Kotori glared at the dazed Itsuka Shido. She crossed her arms in front of her chest and analyzed in her mind. Although I don't have the power to control the world, I don't plan to seal this guy away. I need to make him like this world and not destroy it. Itsuka Kotori's goal was quite simple. She didn't have many extravagant hopes. She simply hoped that through her own efforts, Wu-Chen would like this world. It would be best if he could integrate into human society. As for sealing spirits, Kotori didn't have the ability to do so. It was Shido's unique ability. Elves were unfamiliar with the unfamiliar environment, especially AST, who was very unkind. They continuously shattered Dustless's body, so it was inevitable that the elves would be hostile to this planet. Itsuka Kotori decided to take matters into her own hands. She hoped that through her own efforts, Dustless would like this world and temporarily stabilize his emotions. You can go back now. On the other side, Dustless glanced at Origami Kitsune and the others and suddenly gave the order to expel them. You want us to leave? Origami Kitsune looked at Wu-Chen suspiciously, thinking that she had heard wrongly. However, seeing Wu-Chen's serious look, it didn't seem like he was lying. The group of teammates looked at each other and immediately left. Remember this. Glancing at the members of AST, Dustless said coldly, swords have no eyes. If you dare to trouble me again, you will end up like this. As his voice faded, Dustless suddenly lifted his right foot and stomped onto the ground. Crack, crack, crack. The seemingly stable ground crumbled in an instant. Cracks spread out for dozens of meters. Thump. The sudden violent tremor caught Origami Kitsune and the others off guard. They couldn't withstand a single blow and fell to the ground in a sorry state. Damn you! The members of AST glared angrily at Dustless. Seeing Dustless's attitude of looking down on an ant, they were all furious. I'm not kidding around. He radiated the hostility hidden in his body. A large amount of cold mist visible to the naked eye drifted out. Crack, crack, crack. A layer of crystal-clear ice formed on the ground. It quickly spread and devoured the ground. What a terrifying killing intent. The group of AST members looked at Dustless in panic. They felt as if they had fallen into hell. You can go now. Remember next time, my orders are the supreme order. Even if you have to sacrifice your lives, you must carry out my will. Dustless said sternly. His tone was colder than ice. He then retracted his killing intent. Even if it was just a tiny bit, it was not something these girls could bear. Where there's life, there's hope. Retreat for now. Tabichi Origami looked at Dustless unwillingly. In the end, she chose to leave. The enemy was too strong. It was beyond the limit of what they could contend with. It's about time for me to find a place to stay. After seeing that the AST members had disappeared, Wu Chen sighed. He looked around and saw a tall building in the distance. Then, he walked over decisively. He let the AST members go because he had no other choice. After all, they had just arrived and had no place to stay. It wouldn't be too late to kidnap them after finding a suitable base. Yo, a clear and melodious voice suddenly came, and Wu Chen's line of sight subconsciously swept over. She had a head of fiery red hair that was tied up in a ponytail. She had a lollipop in her mouth, and a strange light flashed through her beautiful eyes. Her cheeky little face was slightly raised, and her skin was as white as snow. Her cheeks were so perfect that no one could find fault with them. Is this Itsuka Kotori? Dustless's mind went blank for a moment. He stared at the girl's delicate face with a strange expression. He could vaguely see the hidden cunning in the depths of his eyes. Itsuka Kotori wouldn't think that I'm an elf and want to date me, right? Dustless shook his head like a rattledrum. He then took a deep look at Itsuka Kotori. He suddenly understood what she meant. She probably wanted him to like or even fall in love with this world and not destroy it. In fact, even without Itsuka Kotori's reminder, Dustless would never destroy a world unless the entire human race stood against him. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2071. How strange, Wu Chen looked at Itsuka Kotori with a weird expression. It was a new experience to be conquered by a 12 or 13-year-old girl. He had never experienced it before. It was a new experience, but at the same time, he was speechless. This is not a bad idea. Dustless looked at Itsuka Kotori with interest and said with a smile, "Little girl, I am not familiar with this place. Why don't you show me around? I will get a reward if I complete the mission." Little girl. Itsuka Kotori's face darkened when she heard Chin Fan's words. I am happy to help. Itsuka Kotori pursed her lips and smiled. Her smile was as beautiful as a blooming flower. She was so young, but her smile was already very alluring. Very good. However, Wu Chen just nodded slightly. His clean and white skin didn't have the slightest reaction. His calm eyes didn't have any ripples. How can this guy not be seduced by me? How dare you? Itsuka Kotori looked at Dustless's calm demeanor and couldn't help but feel frustrated. It was rare for her to doubt her looks. If possible, she hoped that Dustless would be seduced by her. It was a date, and it would be a failure if she couldn't even seduce her lover. What do you like? I will take you there. Itsuka Kotori rolled her eyes and a series of plans appeared in her mind. A confident smile appeared on her delicate face again. What do you like? Dustless lowered his head and thought for a while. He suddenly realized that he didn't have any other hobbies in his long life other than power. Let's go eat. Dustless couldn't think of any other hobbies. He had reached his current level of power, and all his desires had been fulfilled. What other hobbies did he have? He didn't even need them. Instead, he felt hungry. What a strange fairy, she glanced at Wu Qin with a strange look. She pouted her pink lips and said with a smile, I'm familiar with the place nearby. Let's go on a date. No, let's go for a meal. Itsuki Kotori quickly changed her mind. She looked at Dustless and saw that his expression didn't change. She heaved a sigh of relief, but at the same time, she felt a little frustrated. If she couldn't seduce him on a date, what else could it be? Moreover, Itsuki Kotori's original intention was to make Wu Qin like this world. His indifferent attitude towards everything was a failure. What was it if not failure? Kotori, watching Itsuki Kotori drag Dustless away, Itsuki Shido felt his heart was filled with a sense of emptiness. It was as if something that belonged to him was suddenly taken away. It was very uncomfortable. Half an hour later, Itsuki Kotori took Dustless around the food street. In order to make Dustless like this world, Itsuki Kotori spared no effort. Sadly, Wu Qin remained calm from the beginning to the end. The number of times he spoke to Itsuki Kotori during this period could be counted on one hand. He only nodded or replied with a yes. This wooden fairy. The bustling street had returned to normal after the spatial tremor. Itsuki Kotori was holding a glass of juice in her hand, and she was sucking on it with a straw. Her face was puffed up, and she looked rather cute as she panted with anger. Itsuki Kotori asked Dustless about his past, but he was always evasive. Sometimes, he even treated Itsuki Kotori as if she was invisible. This is the most depressing date I have ever had. Itsuki Kotori stomped her feet in frustration. No matter how hard she tried, Dustless didn't seem to care at all. Sometimes, he even thought the boring advertisements were more interesting than her. No wonder I am not charming at all. Itsuki Kotori touched her face, thinking there was something on it. Oh right, Dustless suddenly thought of something and asked in a serious tone, is there an empty apartment nearby? I need to buy a shelter from the wind and rain. Since he was already here, he couldn't just stay on the streets all day. He had to find a suitable place to shelter himself from the storm. An apartment? Itsuki Kotori looked at Dustless in surprise. She frowned. Fairies could constantly release their psychic waves. It was only a matter of time before they were caught if they moved into an apartment. Plus, Dustless might start a war with the humans. He might not be able to destroy the world, but he could easily destroy a city. If that's the case, why don't you stay at my place? Itsuki Kotori thought her place was more suitable for Dustless. She could take care of him if anything happened. Besides, it was her mission to save the fairies. Your place. Dustless looked up and met Itsuki Kotori's clear eyes. She was looking at him with open eyes. Dustless didn't sense any evil intentions in her eyes. This girl is quite bold. Isn't she afraid of inviting a wolf into her house? I remember Itsuki Kotori has a brother called Itsuki Shido. Dustless was surprised. Itsuki Kotori's action was like walking on a tightrope. I don't mean any harm. Dustless stared at Itsuki Kotori for a few more seconds, and his impression of her increased. He knew that this little girl wanted him to live in peace with the humans, and she had no ill intentions. Without a doubt, Itsuki Kotori really wanted to help the elves. However, it was worth mentioning that Dustless wasn't a fairy. He was just an imposter. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2072. Will you agree? Itsuki Kotori clenched her fists tightly. She looked very nervous. After all, elves gave people the impression that they were extremely mysterious creatures, and it was extremely difficult to communicate with them. Getting along with humans and coexisting in the same space was even more difficult. No problem. After a few seconds of silence, Dustless was surprisingly easy to talk to. He even smiled at Itsuka Kotori. That's great. Come home with me. Itsuka Kotori wiped the sweat off her face when she heard Dustless agree. She thought to herself, this elf is not as hard to deal with as I thought. In her mind, elves were vulgar people who would start a fight at the slightest provocation. Itsuka Kotori was surprised that Dustless was so well-mannered. Very easy to deal with. If all elves are like this, I don't need Shido's help. Itsuka Kotori's eyes narrowed into crescents. She looked at Wu-chin with confidence. At the same time, he opened his mouth and was about to set the rules. However, Wu-chen's voice sounded in advance. You have a brother, right? I think his name is Itsuka Shido. I'm sorry, but I'm not interested in living under the same roof as a man. So, please ask him to move out. Wu-chin looked into Itsuka Kotori's eyes, his tone was firm and unquestionable. Ha! Itsuka Kotori was stunned when she heard Dustless's words. You want Shido to move out? Are you kidding me? You need to know who you are. We are the owners, and you are just a lodger. Itsuka Kotori rolled up her sleeves and resisted the urge to beat Dustless to death. She warned loudly, Kid, get this straight. You're the invader. An outsider wants the original owner to move out. Take over the nest. Not a chance. Is that so? Hearing this, Wu-chin just nodded slightly, then suddenly turned around and left. Then I'll take my leave. You don't have to look for me. I'm going to destroy the world now that I'm heartbroken. This bastard, Itsuka Kotori's mouth twitched, and she almost swallowed the lollipop in her mouth. Stop right there. Itsuka Kotori yelled and chased after Chin Xiaobei. Little girl, you think you can fight with me? Don't overestimate yourself. Dustless looked back at Itsuka Kotori and smiled. Stop right there. Itsuka Kotori stood in front of Dustless with her hands on her hips and said, You win. I agree to your terms. That's more like it. Hearing this, Wu-chin chuckled, and then said meaningfully, Soon, you will feel lucky for your decision. Itsuka Shido's apartment. Ha! You want me to move out? Shido stared at Itsuka Kotori in bewilderment. His head was buzzing. He widened his eyes and looked at the helpless girl. Then, he looked at Wu-chin who was resting on the sofa. Suddenly, he felt that his brain wasn't enough. Itsuka Shido almost vomited blood. His position in the family was lower than an outsider like Dustless. Cough cough cough, Itsuka Kotori coughed awkwardly. She felt sorry for Itsuka Shido since he was her brother. But she remembered Dustless's terms and conditions and could only accept it. Shido, don't worry and move out. I'll take care of the house from now on. Itsuka Kotori patted her chest like an adult. Someone will take care of us. Someone else will take care of the cooking. Someone will take care of us. Itsuka Shido looked at Itsuka Kotori in shock. His sister was good at eating, but cooking wasn't her forte. Could it be him? Itsuka Shido looked at Dustless suspiciously. He didn't think that Dustless knew how to cook. His skin was as white as snow and his fingers were long and straight. He didn't look like someone who had cooked before. Creak, at the same time, the closed door was pushed open and a beautiful figure came into view. It's her. Dustless muttered. His calm eyes rippled with surprise. Dustless was familiar with this person. It was a young woman with a beautiful face and a perfect body. She was one of the prettiest women in the country. The only thing that was not complimentary about her was that she looked like she was in a trance. Her eyes were dark and she was wobbling as if she could fall at any moment. It was as if she hadn't slept for years. So it's Murasame Rain. This unreliable woman was Murasame Rain, the analyst of Ratatosk. This is interesting. Does this woman know how to cook? I think she's here to monitor me and test my data. Dustless closed his eyes again. He wasn't surprised. With Itsuka Kotori's status, it wasn't a problem to mobilize her. There had never been a male elf before. Sending Murasame Rain to test Dustless's data was normal. These guys really think I'm an elf. Dustless sighed helplessly. It wasn't a good thing to be treated as an elf. He would be watched and watched. Sometimes, there would even be flies like AST harassing him. It was really annoying. What bad luck. Itsuka Shido looked at Dustless unhappily and suddenly went to his room. It seemed like he was going to pack his clothes and leave. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2073. Time flew by, and 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. Itsuka Shido's home. No, it should be Dustless's home now. The former had been expelled, and now there were only 3 people left in his home, Dustless, Itsuka Kotori, and Rain Murasame. As for Itsuka Shido, he was kicked out of the house. Strange. Rain Murasame frowned and looked at Dustless, and the dark circles under her eyes wrinkled a few times. I didn't detect psychic waves from Dustless. Psychic waves could be detected from elves, but Dustless didn't have this kind of energy fluctuation, which indirectly indicated that Dustless was not an elf. Not an elf. Looking at Rain Murasame suspiciously, Itsuka Kotori rarely doubted this confidant. If he's not an elf, Dustless is even more strange. Thinking of the battle that day, Itsuka Kotori cautiously said, he used overwhelming strength to defeat AST that day. If he's not an elf, doesn't that mean Dustless is a human? Lane, have you seen such a powerful human like Dustless? No, if Dustless is really a human, he's definitely the strongest one. Murasame Rain Murasame's tone couldn't help but stagnate. It was the first time she encountered such an incredible and bizarre event. A human, without using the slightest equipment, defeated AST with overwhelming strength, which was an extremely amazing event in itself. So, we must pay closer attention to him. Itsuka Kotori crossed her arms, touched her chin, and wisely said, this kind of person is no less dangerous than elves, we can't be careless. But who will monitor you when you go to school? Murasame Rain Murasame asked. It's very simple. Itsuka Kotori, who was wearing pajamas, walked elegantly, and skipped toward Dustless, and the corner of her mouth revealed an imperceptible arc. What's the matter? Dustless, who was bored reading the newspaper, asked flatly. His tone was always calm, and it gave people the feeling that he was as calm as thunder. You. Hearing Wu Chen's arrogant tone, Itsuka Kotori was furious. She said angrily, watch your tone. The owner of this house is called Itsuka. You're right. Dustless was non-committal. He lowered his head and said, the sign at the door is indeed Dustless's house. I think it should be changed to Dustless's house now. From now on, this is my territory. Poochie. Murasame Rain, who was drinking milk, spat it out and looked at Dustless with a cold face. She secretly gave him a thumbs up. Daring to say such words in front of Itsuka Kotori, this guy must be brave. Don't push your luck. Itsuka Kotori was infuriated. She pointed a trembling finger at Dustless and scolded, shameless. How shameless can you be? Suddenly, Itsuka Kotori's voice stopped abruptly. She suddenly felt cold all over, as if some prehistoric creature was staring at her. She couldn't help but shiver uncontrollably. Shoo shoo shoo. A chilly wind started to blow in the large room. The floor started to freeze, and the window was the most obvious. A layer of ice blocked the sunlight from entering the room. It was as if she had been transported to hell in an instant. There was a suffocating pressure all around. She felt uncomfortable. She followed the source and was shocked to find that the person who dragged her to hell was dustless with a cold face. I'm pushing my luck. Little girl, although I won't lower myself to the same level as a 12 or 13-year-old girl, you still have to be careful with your words. Dustless put the newspaper aside and looked at Itsuka Kotori. He explained casually, do you think I don't know what you're thinking? You just want to test my personal data. How boring. Haven't you two been doing this for the past 3 days? You found out. Murasame Rain's pupils froze. She looked at Dustless in disbelief. She thought she did it quietly, but Dustless had already noticed it. Nonsense. Itsuka Kotori snorted and retorted, since you have already noticed it, why didn't you expose us? Why did you expose your personal data to us? It's up to you. Wuchen waved his hand in boredom and laughed involuntarily. He sighed in his heart, no matter what, I'm already a few hundred years old. I can't possibly fight with a 12 or 13 years old little girl, right? I don't have much to say. I just want to tell you. Wuchen cleared his throat and said in an inviolable tone, the land under my feet is my territory. That's all. In other words, this planet is mine. What kind of barbaric system is this? Itsuka Kotori and Murasame Rain looked at Dustless with dissatisfaction. They thought Dustless was taking over Itsuka Kotori's home. Who would have thought that he wanted to take over Earth? Boom. 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 At this moment, a violent tremor suddenly spread from the horizon, and the blue sky trembled fiercely. Spacequake detected in this area. Residents nearby, please evacuate immediately. Spacequake detected in this area. Residents nearby, please evacuate immediately. The ear-piercing sound of the alarm echoed through the clouds and into the earphones of everyone within a radius of tens of kilometers. Itsuka Kotori and Dustless, who were nearby, heard it loud and clear. Seems like the elves are really here this time. Dustless narrowed his eyes and looked at the distorted sphere. A strange light flashed in his eyes. Is that the Night Sword God Toka? P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2074. Among the elves that appeared recently, Dustless thought for a while, and it seemed that there was only one Night Sword God Toka. Kakaka. The strange energy ball in the void continued to expand, occupying the surrounding sky. The expansion speed was extremely fast, and even the blue sky was covered in the blink of an eye. Boom. The buildings around the energy ball suffered a devastating blow one after another, turning into barren ruins. They were shattered by the powerful shockwave, and the bare ground was like a desert, with sand and dust filling the sky. Boom. The violent airwave hit Itsuka Kotori's house, and the stable house suddenly shook, and it was about to collapse. Really, there is a limit to how unscrupulous you can be. Dustless frowned, and his eyes turned into eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, and then a violent chakra burst out, and the golden evil energy covered the whole house. The violent vibration stopped, and the house was protected by Kansusanu's body. What is this? Murasame Lingyin looked at Wuchen in shock, with a face full of astonishment and surprise. Originally, Murasame Rain was still worried in the heart of the space shock, but she didn't know why. The moment this golden energy swept out from Wuchen's body, her irritated heart immediately became as calm as still water, which was very strange. Don't worry about it, leave here with me, Rain. Itsuka Kotori looked at Murasame Rain seriously, and then the two quickly exchanged a look, and then quickly left under Dustless's gaze. She probably went to find Itsuka Shido. Looking at the two's back, Dustless was too lazy to ask more, and simply sat on the sofa, drinking coffee while reading the newspaper leisurely. If Itsuka Shido could save the world, then he could count on him, and Dustless was not interested in saving the entire human race, and the life and death of the people had nothing to do with him. But, looking at the messy world outside the window, Dustless's eyes suddenly narrowed as he muttered to himself, "Is it really appropriate to be so presumptuous on my planet? Nightblade God 10 fragrances." Dustless placed his right thumb on the sofa and tapped it rhythmically. A cold light condensed in his pupils, as terrifying as a blade. A sense of oppression that was several times more terrifying than that of the elves circulated around him. If the space quake caused by the elves was a natural disaster, then Dustless was as terrifying as the Grim Reaper. "Commander, isn't it too early to count on the young soldier?" Kotori and Rain Murasame rushed to Shido's school. Along the way, Rain Murasame couldn't help but murmur. After all, Shido had no knowledge in this area. If he didn't tame the elves, it would be bad. Do we have any other choices besides Shido? Kotori glanced at Rain Murasame and knew that her worries were unfounded, so she said helplessly, "Rain, it's not about whether it's appropriate or not, it's just that we don't have any other choice." Kotori couldn't think of any other plan other than using Shido's power to tame the elves. Although Dustless was an exception, Kotori didn't think that other elves were as easy to deal with as Dustless. Elves were naturally repulsed by unfamiliar environments and humans. Bang! Inside Shido's classroom, Itsuka Kotori kicked open the classroom door and dragged Shido out of there, ignoring everyone's shock. "Shido, the mission of saving the world is yours." Kotori dragged Shido away after saying that. As for Rain Murasame, she stayed behind to mediate the situation for Kotori. Other than Shido, no one else could deal with the elves. Shido was the only one who had the power to seal the elves, so he was the only choice. "Kotori, let go of me." Inside the hallway, Shido, who was almost strangled to death, struggled to get up. This was the first time he saw Kotori being so rough. "Don't waste time, come with me now." Kotori glared at Shido and dragged him to the center of the spacequake. "That's the center of the spacequake, are you crazy?" Shido was shocked when he saw where Kotori was going. He yelled, "Come with me now, kids shouldn't be messing around." Unfortunately, Kotori didn't appreciate it. She didn't even look at him as she dragged Shido out of the school. Humph. The commander mode at Itsuka Kotori was indeed extraordinary. She was strong in every aspect. Seeing that her door was locked from the inside, and she didn't have the key, she kicked it without hesitation. Bam! Not sure where Itsuka Kotori got her strength from, but she kicked the door open. This little girl is really merciless. "Be careful, this is my house." Wuchen looked over and couldn't help but shake his head. When he saw Itsuka Shido's bitter face, he pretended not to see anything and continued reading the newspaper. "Your house. The owner of this house is Shido." Itsuka Kotori almost jumped up and glared at Dustless. She had never heard of such a domineering elf like Dustless. The planet he was stepping on was hers. How could he be so domineering and barbaric? This kind of rude and unreasonable behavior was even worse than robbery. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2075. The door of your house. The owner of this house is Itsuka. Itsuka Kotori almost jumped out of her seat and glared at Dustless. She had never heard of an elf as domineering as Dustless. The planet he was standing on was hers. How could he be so barbaric? This kind of rude and unreasonable behavior was even worse than robbery. Staring at the angry girl, Wuchen just smiled gently without saying anything. Boom boom boom. At this moment, the violent tremors came again. The surface of the ground was easily torn apart, revealing shocking cracks. The vast land seemed to be on top of the sea, swaying non-stop. It was as if the end of the world had arrived. Kotori, let's get out of here. It's not safe here. We might be destroyed by the elves at any time. Itsuka Shido was in a terrible state. His body was trembling in fear. This was normal. After all, he was a human. Most humans would feel fear when facing an elf. No. Itsuka Kotori rejected Itsuka Shido's suggestion and quickly explained, Shido, I have a mission for you. You will go on a date with that elf for me later. A date? Itsuka Shido's face twitched. He looked at Itsuka Kotori speechlessly. He could go on a date with anyone, but he had to go on a date with an elf. Wasn't this pushing himself into a fire pit? It was an obvious act of suicide. Let me explain. Itsuka Kotori sighed and began to explain the nature of the date. This is too much. Dustless walked to the window lazily and looked up at the sky. His gaze froze when he saw the girl standing in the sky. He mumbled to himself, Night Sword God Toka. She seems to be quite strong. The girl standing in the sky had a head of long purple hair. She held a chilling sword in her hand. Her eyes were as dazzling as purple gems. Her skin was fair and flawless. Her perfect face had a hint of sadness. Her eyes were gloomy and hesitant. It seemed like she was unfamiliar with this world. So this is Night Sword God Toka. Dustless nodded and sat down on the sofa to read the newspaper. None of this had anything to do with him. Do you understand? Sure Dao. 5 minutes later, Itsuka Kotori explained the meaning of date and said sternly, no matter what, you have to deal with that guy. Shido wanted to cry, but he had no tears. He wanted to reject this mission, but Kotori glared at him. You help me from the side. She took another glance at Dustless and said in a righteous tone, you have to pay if you want to eat here. You're the one who invited me to stay here. Dustless glanced at Itsuka Kotori and said, help you take care of that elf. Sorry, I don't have much time, and I don't like to meddle in other people's business. Anyone would reject a mission that didn't have any benefits and would bring a lot of trouble. You. You heartless bastard. Kotori glared at Dustless and dragged Shido away. Dustless was acting shamelessly, but Kotori didn't have the means to punish Dustless. Itsuka Shido. Dustless stared at Itsuka Shido's back and muttered to himself, this kid seems to have the ability to seal the elf's power. Normal humans don't have that kind of power. I guess it's just a so-so. But. Dustless sighed and said, Itsuka Kotori's stupid ideas will only harm Itsuka Shido. Dustless still remembered that in the original work, Itsuka Kotori and her subordinates often came up with all kinds of bad ideas to trick Itsuka Shido. If Shido wasn't smart enough, he would have been killed by Itsuka Toka. Shido, listen to me. Itsuka Kotori pulled Shido's arm and said in a serious tone, you will go on a date with the princess later. Elves aren't bad people. You should make friends with her and try your best to enlighten her. Make her like this world. Itsuka Shido's mouth twitched, and he asked in a gloomy tone, me? Go on a date with her. Are you sure you won't be killed by the princess? Of course not. Itsuka Kotori popped a lollipop into her mouth and smiled proudly. After detailed analysis, there is a 30% chance that, princess, will be angry, but she will definitely not kill you. Princess is not the kind of person who would kill innocent people. She accidentally caused the space tremor, and you have an honest face. Kotori gave Shido a thumbs up and told him not to worry. Honest man's face. Shido touched his face and couldn't help but smile bitterly. Kotori was looking down on him. What are you waiting for? Kotori kicked the cowardly Itsuka Shido and scolded, we just got the exact data from Ratatoskr. Princess is in a good mood right now. If AST is going to attack us later, you will definitely be killed if you provoke her. What Itsuka Kotori didn't know was that Dustless had done something out of the ordinary, and it had angered Toka, who was in a relatively stable mood. It was not that Dustless was deliberately trapping Ido Shirdao. Everyone had a limit to their tolerance. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2076. Boom. 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 In the boundless sky, a raging wave flashed. Ha! Such a huge commotion was like a shooting star in the night sky. It was too eye-catching, and Night Sword God Toka looked over. Fierce Slayer. She waved her hand, and Night Sword God Toka slashed down with her blade. Whoosh! 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 It was as if even the air had been sliced apart, and a clear crack appeared in the vast void. Boom! 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 Fierce Slayer's sharp edge collided with the incoming slash, causing the boundless sky to tremble. Buzz! 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 The deathly silent void let out a series of extremely human-like wails. If one looked up at the sky, they would be surprised to find that the lazy white clouds had all been swept away. Boom! Boom! The two equally powerful moves collided violently. Immediately after, an endless shockwave swept out. Yidao Shintoxiang, who was caught off guard, was violently attacked. Whoosh! 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 Shido looked up at the shadow in the sky and saw Toka's face almost freeze. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He looked back at Kotori, who was hiding in the dark, and sighed helplessly. Whoosh! 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 Going on a date with such a monster. Whoosh! 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 You've got guts. Night Sword God raised his sword again and looked at Itoka Shido coldly. It was worth mentioning that the person who had attacked Night Sword God Toxiang had nothing to do with Itoka Shido. It was Dustless. As for why he suppressed Night Blade God 10 Incense, the reason was even simpler. Dustless was not the kind of person who would remain silent after being slapped in the face, regardless of who it was. The strength of the elves seems to be not bad. Looking up at the aftermath of the sky that had not completely dissipated, Dustless nodded secretly. It seemed that the person in the ghouls' world he had encountered before was much stronger. This is going to be a good show. Dustless had a gloating smile on his face as he stared at the petite figure in the void. The words on Toka's face were almost engraved with the words, I am very unhappy. How dare Itsuka Shido approach her so recklessly? He didn't know how to spell the word death. Swish. Swish. Fierce Killer Duke abruptly swung down, and an incomparably biting cold light fell beside Itoka Shido. Boom boom boom. The ground on the right side of his feet suddenly exploded, and a horrifying hole was created. The ground was shaking, and Itoka Shido's body couldn't continue to maintain balance. Plop. Itoka Shido was careless and fell to the ground. This is bad. Seeing such a scene, Itsuka Kotori couldn't help but regret. Letting Shido, a human, touch the elves on Wrath's head, wasn't this asking for trouble? Why did you suddenly attack me? Itoka Shido, who fell down, was confused. He looked up at Toka Toka, who was standing in the void with a cold temperament. He looked at her blankly. He didn't seem to have offended this female elf. Could it be Itoka Shido was also a smart person? Thinking of the attack just now, he wanted to cry but had no tears. He was sweating in his heart and thought, did she think that I was the one who attacked her? Thinking of this, Itoka Shido's body trembled twice. This was simply an unexpected disaster. The attack just now was done by Dushless, it had nothing to do with him. Shoo shoo shoo. At the same time, a bright light flashed across the sky. Toka Toka also landed beside Itoka Shido. Toka Shido looked down at Itoka Shido and asked in an unfriendly tone, Are you here to kill me too? Were you the one who attacked me just now? As soon as he finished speaking, Toka raised his sword with a ferocious expression. If Itoka Shido didn't give a reasonable explanation, he would cut him down with his sword. It was a very threatening sight. I heard you, it has nothing to do with me. I am here to help you. Itoka Shido quickly refused. His face was pale with fear, but he had no choice but to face it. Itoka Shido couldn't help but tremble when he saw Toka Toka's ferocious look. He subconsciously took 2 steps back. Oh no! Seeing this, Itoka Kotori's heart skipped a beat. An indescribable sense of uneasiness spread through every inch of her body. Her heart raced. It was filled with an indescribable sense of uneasiness. Especially when she saw Toka Toka's sword hovering above Itoka Shido's head. She was sweating profusely. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 tips plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 auto subscriptions plus updates. You're tuning in to the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.